computer. Okay, so this airbrush has been around for a long time, and you can see actually it's worn off right here. I've actually worn this off by my thumb being in that section of it, and on the back you can see my finger actually touched and wore off the chrome. You can see the brass beneath it. Okay, so this airbrush has been around a long time, and it's been soaked in Windex for a long time. And the reason I mention that is because there's I don't want to call it a rumor going around, but there's a narrative going around that says that you can't use Windex on chrome or ammonia on chrome because it destroys the chrome. Well, this airbrush is soaked in ammonia to clean it for, I don't want to say decades, but months and months over the years. And the chrome is still intact. What the damage is far more great where I've touched with my finger than the Windex is. So don't be afraid to use the Windex on your airbrush. So a lot of people say, oh, you can't use Windex or ammonia on an airbrush because it'll destroy the chrome. Well, no, it doesn't really do that much damage to the chrome. It probably might compromise a little bit, but don't worry so much about it. I see people like, oh, you can't do it. You can't do it. But yes, you can. Okay. The other thing is you see this airbrush has a short trigger. It's a softer spring in it. Okay. There's a soft spring in it that's down in here that requires less pressure to push it down. So I can just lay my finger across it and I can get air. I can actuate the air by just laying my finger across it. Now I want you also to see my finger position. It's different than the conventional way. Some of you who know me and been to my class before have seen this. The airbrush was designed to be sprayed like this, either like this, with your finger like this, or like this. A lot of people do it like that. Now, that's fine, but the muscle you use to actuate this trigger in this direction is where? Well, it's down in your forearm. It's way down here. That is not a very coordinated muscle compared to your fingertip. Now, let me explain that. I lay my finger across the airbrush like this. Just lay it right across like this. I tuck my thumb right here, and I squeeze it. I move the tip of my finger up and down. Okay, and as you know, if you want detail with your airbrush, your trigger only moves back just a fraction of a millimeter sometimes, just that much, okay? And so by moving my finger through this arc right here, a large arc like that, I'm actually moving the trigger a very small amount. So I can actually have more control over my trigger movement forward and backwards by moving the tip of my finger up and down like that. So that gives me more control over my airbrush, over my line, and the fingertip control is much more of a fine motor skill than the muscle in my forearm down here. So this is, well, it's well and good, but if you want a little more control over it, try laying your finger over it. Now, I know what you're saying, well, Drew, what if I've got a top-mounted cup? Well, if you got a top-mounted cup, it's going to be a little more difficult. That's one of the reasons I use a side-mounted cup, is because a side-mounted cup, it does not interfere with my trigger. But I have held an airbrush with a top-mounted cup up here, and so what I've had to do is turn my finger sideways like this. I don't know if I can get you a top view, like that, and work like that. It's kind of cramped looking, I know, but that's the only way I could do it. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to go back to this part right here. Now, that's not to say that you have to change the way you hold your airbrush today, okay? I'm just giving you an alternative, an option that might benefit you. So you may want to try it out at some point. You don't have to do it today as a test. And I learned that when I used to paint t-shirts. I used to paint t-shirts all day standing up. And it was pretty hard to do because your fingers working all the time. It's all freehand. And it's easy to get finger fatigue. This is also easier for on your finger because the only part you're moving is your fingertip. You're just barely moving your fingertip to paint. And so it doesn't require as much effort. You have less fatigue. However, it does require a shorter throw trigger. I don't want to say require. It's more of an advantage to have a shorter trigger with less throw on it. So that's the reason that Chad Elliott and I designed these lower types of triggers so that there's less movement. Now, there is a tall trigger available that comes on the new airbrushes, but I've learned, or I've determined, that that has a greater throw because it's taller. You know, imagine it up here. I'm going to exaggerate. It's way up here. So to move the trigger back and forth, you've got to travel further with it. And traveling further is more work for your finger, more effort expended, more energy expended, and you just get more finger fatigue. So while there's more mechanical advantage in throwing the trigger from a distance like this, you don't really need a mechanical advantage. You don't need more force or leverage to move that trigger. All it ends up being is more work for your fingers. So I feel that Iwata did a disservice and made an error in raising the trigger, elevating the trigger, and I actually had the audacity to call it an upgrade. I don't consider it an upgrade. I consider it an engineering mistake, you know, because it just wasn't, it didn't really make it optimal for us. So Chad Elliott, by the way, if you don't know him, he's the guy who designed the Sharpen Air, which is another story I'll talk about in just a moment. But he's out of Texas, and he designed these. I designed the triggers, and he manufactured them for me. Lower trigger, rounded off. The other thing about the new triggers that they're square. The taller trigger that comes with the airbrush is a square trigger, and when you lay your finger across it like this, the corner is going to put a little dent in your finger. That's another problem I have with it. So, even if you don't have to change and buy a new trigger even, but you could grind off the corners of the new trigger that comes with the airbrush, and it'll be a little bit more ergonomic for you. It'll feel a little better. And speaking of ergonomics, you see I've got this piece down here. This is the little moisture trap. It's a mini moisture trap that comes with. This was originally offered by Holbein back in the 80s, okay? They didn't patent it, and of course now Iwata has it. It's not really functional. I don't really use it for anything. I've never taken water out of it. But as far as ergonomics go, it actually gives me something a little more substantial to hang on to. So when I'm painting, it's got something more to grip onto than just having the skinny hose coming from beneath. So that's the reason it's on there. It's not on there for functionality as much as it is for comfort. Okay, so if you've got an airbrush that comes with that, that's that's the reason to use it. I don't think it hurts anything to have it, but it's worked fine for me. Okay, all right. So let me talk a little bit about more of this. Now I mentioned Chad Elliott. I want to talk a little bit about Chad. Chad also developed the Sharpenair, and the Sharpenair is a device. If you haven't used one yet, it's a fantastic device because what it does, if you've got a bent needle, and sooner or later you're going to bend that needle. Okay, that's just normal. You drop it, you bump into something. It's just plenty of reasons for the needle to get bent. I probably bend mine at least once or twice a day. Okay, and the reason I bend is because I'm working without the guard. Now, why do I work without the guard? Well, because I want to get at that needle and pick it. Why? Because of tip dry. Obviously, tip dry, especially with water-based paint, is going to be more prevalent, and you've got to deal with it because when the paint dries on the tip, it's going to block your paint. It's going to cause problems with the spray, and if you don't deal with it, your airbrush is going to not function correctly. So I try to preemptively get ahead of it. So when I'm spraying, when I look over at my reference, I automatically pick my needle like that. I pick the needle and keep on spraying. Now, you can also use a Q-tip if you want to take a Q-tip, or as they say in Europe, I think a cotton ball, and you can stick it on the front. I usually wet it with some ammonia. Let's get it on the screen there. And I'll just twirl in the front. You see it hanging right there. See that little piece hanging? Oh, if you guys can see it. Okay, right about there. See that little piece? Hey, that means I got a bend in my needle. My needle tip is bent. It's actually grabbed on to that cotton. Okay, so that means I've got a bent needle there, and sometimes you can straighten it with your fingernail, but this is where you need the Sharpenair. And I don't have my Sharpenair here, but basically it's a box that with a hole in it, a few holes in it. You stick the needle in the hole and you spin it, and that grinds the needle back to true. Okay, it's about $35, which when you consider the needle's about that much, is worthwhile. You can sharpen a needle 8 times before you're done with it. Okay, that's about the limit as told to me by Chad. Okay, 8 times is the limit. So what it does, it reduces your need to purchase needles throughout the year. Okay, and now's probably a good time to have one then because there's a needle shortage going on. There are a lot of back ordered needles, so if you can find needles, grab them because they're behind in the manufacturing. So it's hard to get needles from Iwata. I don't know if they caught up with them or not yet, but as of a month or so ago, they were all back ordered. So needles were hard to come by, and so Sharpenair. That Sharpenair, everybody sells them, so they come in different colors: green, pink, I think orange. I'm not sure. Black's the one I've got. So later on, if I find one, I'll show it to you if you haven't seen one. But Sharpenair, SHARPENAIR. Is there an E on the end of it? I don't know. Is there an E on the end? Anybody know? I forget. Anyway, Sharpenair. It's not a paid endorsement. I'm just saying this is what I use. All right. All right. So airbrush hose. How much pressure am I using? That's the other question that comes a lot. Well, different airbrushes require different pressure. I have determined that the optimal amount for this is 22.5 pounds per square inch. For European guys, I don't know what that is in bar. 1.6, I don't know. You may have to do the conversion, but 22.5 PSI. How did I come up with that number? Well, Gerald Mendez was teaching at my school, and I watched him mix some color and with some reducer in his cup, and I asked him what his ratio was. He said, I don't know. I just do it by feel. So I decided to sit down and figure out what the optimal ratio of reducer to paint was. And while I was doing that, I decided to also figure out what the optimal pressure was for this type of airbrush. And it's 22.5 PSI, and the reducer with the paint we're using, which is Createx illustration paint, is 3.5 parts of paint to 1 part reducer, or 7 to 2. Okay, 7 parts of paint to 2 parts of reducer. That is optimal for detail. That doesn't mean you have to reduce it. In fact, I rarely reduce my paint. This paint is designed to be used straight out of the bottle. Let me go and grab some right here. Okay. It's designed to be used straight out of the bottle. okay? Which means that you just put it in the airbrush and spray. And that's what I liked about it. When this paint was originally designed for my school in Blair, it was just because they had another paint out there called Wicked. And Wicked's great. Createx Wicked is designed for automotive, but it's really strong paint. It's resilient. And it has to be because it's automotive grade paint. It has to be strong. But I wanted something weak. I need something I can manipulate, I can stress, I could create special effects with. So I asked them to make me a paint with a weaker binder. And so they made it originally just for my school, but I think they put so much money into R&D that they need to get some of their money back. So they made it for the sell for the public. One of the things about it is it's re-wettable with an amine. What does that mean? That means that ammonia can dissolve it. Where do you find ammonia? In glass cleaner. Ammonia now, except for you guys Anakin over in Europe, it's banned in Europe. Ammonia is banned from glass cleaner in most parts of Europe. So in that case, you want to go to the pharmacy and grab some ammonia, and probably want to water it down to about 2%, maybe. So you really want to dilute it and use that as your ability to, or special effect tool to clean. And actually, I've got it in a spray bottle. One thing that helps me is I've got a little spray bottle here because you can also spray and get texture and effects like that, and I'll show you how that works later. So great tool, but it's great for cleaning. I'll spray some on the tip of a needle or put some in my cup, and it dissolves this paint like completely away. So it's a great or fantastic device or liquid to utilize to keep your airbrushes in top shape. And again, despite the rumor, it does not destroy the chrome on your airbrush. It might compromise a little bit, but you see my airbrush is what, 35, 40 years old, and it still shines, except for my fingerprints all over it, okay? All right, so, and also, guys, if you have questions during this, let me know. I'm trying to be as concise as possible as I go through here. Now, the number one problem with airbrush, we all know, is going to be the tip dry, okay? The other problems you're going to have with it is dirt on the around the hole right here. You can't see it, but what happens, dirt accumulates around the hole where the airbrush the needle sticks out. I'll see if I get some more focus on here. If it's going to let me focus, Mr. Camera, you're going to let me focus? It's probably not going to let me focus this close. Let me see if I can lock the focus in on my finger. There we go. Come on, Mr. Camera. Focus, focus, focus. No, it's not. I don't think it's going to let me. Maybe. It's trying to focus on the background. Let's just dominate that with my hand there. All right, that's fairly okay. So the front of the airbrush, there's a hole sticking out about right here. You see that out of there, and that accumulates dirt around. And the symptom of that will be that your airbrush, the air doesn't seem to want to come out anymore. It just kind of slows down. You're pushing down. It's almost like somebody standing on your air hose or you run out of air. Well, just take this cap off, take your finger and scratch around the hole with your fingernail and put it back on. It should work, okay? The other problem that people have that they don't see is a leaky head here, meaning that there's not a good seal around this. There's threads here and there's threads here. And if you push down and get air out of it, you can't see it, but sometimes these leak. And when they leak, it causes the airbrush to skip. So if your airbrush is ever skipping, you know, where you're trying to spray and you get an on and off kind of intermittent pattern, that's most likely a problem with your leaky head up here. And that causes you to lose vacuum in the front of it, okay? And how do you test for that? Well, simply, you take some Windex or ammonia or soapy water and you spray it on there and look, and when you push down for air, if you see bubbles coming out of this, you've got a leak. How do you fix that? Well, as you remember, we can put some plumber's putty. I would not use Teflon tape. Plumber's putty is the ideal thing, but plumber's putty is a little bit thick for this. So I feel that the best solution would be beeswax, okay? Beeswax you can get at an art supply store. You get them online. But in a pinch, if you don't have beeswax, chapstick, because chapstick is a waxy surface, and chapsticks works great. What you do is you take this off, you put some on the threads, and you screw it back on, and that's all you do for both areas, okay? And this is the third most common problem, okay? The first most common problem, obviously, is tip dry, about 9 out of 10 times, tip dry. Second most common problem is dirt around the hole right there, which causes the airbrush to stop. Let me go back to the symptoms. Symptoms of tip dry, first of all, your airbrush paint stops, okay? That's what you first do. You're spraying along, everything's looking good. The birds are singing, the sun is shining, you're spraying, everything's great. And all of a sudden your airbrush stops. You're spraying, you're pulling back, nothing's happening. Well, that's most likely tip dry. Paint is dried on the needle. And usually what happens when people do that is that they say, oh, my airbrush isn't spraying. So what do? They pull back further on the trigger, right? Because I want more paint. It's like driving a car. If it slows down, you push your foot on the accelerator to try to get it to go faster. Well, same thing happens here. I've got no paint, so I'm going to pull back further on this. And so you're pulling back and pulling back and pulling back. And what's going to happen? Well, that tip dry has created a dam on the front of your airbrush. It's basically blocking the paint from flowing. And that dam sometimes can break. by itself. It can completely fall off. And when that dam breaks and your trigger's all the way back here, guess what's going to happen? That paint's going to come flying out of your airbrush, make a big splatter, making your day less than optimal. Okay. So if your airbrush stops spraying, if it stops working, don't continue to spray. Certainly don't pull further back on the trigger. Stop and check it. Okay. So if it stops, stop, check it. Usually what I do is I'll just automatically, unconsciously pull that trigger, pull my airbrush up to my finger and pick it and continue spraying. So I've got a habit of picking it. So every time I look at my reference, my hand automatically goes up here, picks the needle, and I continue spraying. Okay, so I'm spraying, and then my eye goes over to the reference on left or right. And while my eye goes to the reference, my hand goes up and picks the needle as I continue doing it. It's a habit from painting t-shirts, okay, because it accumulates by itself. All paint does it, you know. It's less prevalent in solvent-based paint. So if you use solvent-based paint, it happens less often. Okay, but there's no paint that's totally immune from it. It's the only thing immune from it would be spraying straight water, because otherwise the paint needs to be sticky. You have to understand that for the paint to stick to the surface, there's a binder in it, and that binder, it has to stick to something. Well, it also sticks to the needle, and that's the problem. Now, how do you get around that? Well, you can reduce the stickiness of it by polishing your needle. Okay. Now, with the Sharpen Air Kit comes a polishing pad, and sometimes I'll just use that pad by itself and take the needle out and polish the needle by just spinning the needle or rubbing the needle against this polishing pad at usually about a 45-degree angle. I'll see if I can get one later during the course and demonstrate how that works. Okay, polishing pad. And I see somebody send me a message here. Okay, so let me answer that question too. So the question is a good question here. What's the main difference between the regular Createx and illustration Createx? Well, the regular Createx is probably that it was auto air. Okay, I think it was auto air back in the day. But it's the old version. And for some reason, when the first version came out, it's a different binder. The short answer is it's a different binder in the regular Createx. So it's a little more sticky. The illustration Createx has something else in the binder. It's a nanotechnology. It has the ability to have a delayed cross-linking capability. What do I mean by that? Well, if you think about concrete, when it sets up, it doesn't cure right away. It has this cross-linking where it becomes harder and harder over time as cross-links form inside. Well, paint's the same way. Over time, it gets harder and more resilient as it cures, okay? Well, this paint, the illustration paint, has delayed cross-linking, meaning that it's dry, but it's not hard yet. So it's not hard for 10 minutes or so, and after 10 minutes or so, it starts becoming hard. That gives you some open time that you can work on it, manipulate it, scratch it. You can actually scratch it with a toothpick, you know, you scratch off, and that lets you remove paint or create some special effects in it, things like that. And that's what I wanted to do with it. So the difference between Createx illustration and everything else is that cross-linking characteristic, which is fantastic. But I'm going to say something here about it, because the laws change in the world of paint. Chemicals have suddenly become unavailable because of environmental laws and things like that. So the paint that Createx started with, it has to change over time, because about maybe a couple of years ago, the laws came to effect that made the components of the Createx illustration paint, some of them are unavailable. And so what the chemists have had to do is try to make the paint do the same thing with different chemicals. You know how that is. So I don't think it's perfected yet, because the paint is not what it used to be. Now, I try to find, if I can, old paint, if I can, because it seems to be a little better. I don't think they've got everything resolved yet with regards to the paint. It doesn't scratch off very easily in some cases, and there's workarounds for it. We have workarounds, but it's a little bit less friendly to work with. The new paint is than it used to be. Okay, the colors are the same, the pigments the same type. The pigments that they use in the Createx illustration paint are automotive grade pigments, so they don't fade easily over time. The same pigments they use in House of Color and all that. Pigments are the same. They get it from the same place. It's the binder, that the glue that the paint lives in, that's what's different. They're different combination of chemicals that make up the binder. That's where the main difference in all paint resides, okay? The main difference is a little subtle other differences, but that's the way the world of paint. It's same binder, same pigment, but different binders for most of the paint, okay? It's different in some places, because certain paints use dyes. Now, dye is a little bit different. It's not like a pigment where you've got particles, where dye is more of a liquid type of thing, and it is a little bit less light fast. What I mean by light fast? Well, pigment that you have on cars and automotive is resistant to fading. Uh, a lot of paint is susceptible to fading from sunlight or ultraviolet light, and it fades. The yellow is probably one of the most notorious of that. So if you have a print on the wall that's been there for a few years, you may notice that it turning a little bit purple. And it turns purple because the yellow in it fades away. It becomes becomes less strong or has less intensity because of the ultraviolet lights. Now, and so when the yellow goes away, the complement of yellow is purple or violet, and that's all you're seeing more purplish colors in your prints on the wall. Okay, so that's the problem with dyes. Dyes are especially notorious for that. There used to be a dye that we all use, and you older guys that are not almost my age can relate to it, is Dr. P.H. Martin. Back to when you started airbrushing, that was the dye everybody used. Fantastic. It was like ink. You dropped an airbrush, it sprayed beautifully, but it was fugitive. Fugitive means that it was very vulnerable to ultraviolet light and faded. Sometimes within a week or two, you could see that it had faded. But it was only designed for reproduction where you're getting a magazine advertisement or an illustration. So it was photographed and then you were done with it, and it didn't matter to you if it was faded then. But now people are more concerned with longevity and archival quality of paint. So the manufacturers have stepped up and you're seeing better paint. Holbein is also, I used to use Holbein a lot. Holbein is an incredible paint. In fact, it sprayed so beautifully and everything. It was incredible, but it was fugitive. Okay. It did not hold up under ultraviolet light, and a lot of my originals faded over the years. So I quit using it. That's, if anybody wonders why I switched over to the Createx brand, was because of longevity and permanence in the pigment. Well, so now Holbein has fixed that problem. So Holbein also makes a fantastic paint, an acrylic paint. I'll try to bring one up later and show you what it looks like. But it's a beautiful, beautiful spraying paint. Now, I don't know if it has the characteristics of having that open time where you can scratch it. I think that's still unique to Createx, where it's got delayed cross-linking. I don't know, but as far as spraying, that's nice. Another great spraying paint is E-Tack. The E-Tack, the reason it sprays so well and has less tip drive is because the binder's less sticky in it. Okay, and E-Tack is made, I think, here in the U.S. It doesn't have a sticky binder, but because it doesn't have a sticky binder, it's also more fragile. So once you lay it down on the paper, you could unintentionally scratch it with your finger by rubbing your finger on it and damage it. So it's kind of, you're trading one benefit, but it's costing you another benefit as far as strength. Okay, so, but it doesn't tip dry very often. So it's a very nice paint. A lot of good paint here. So now the other question I see is that sometimes people say, well, are airbrush paints transparent or are they opaque? Well, by default, airbrush paint is usually transparent unless it says so on the bottle. Except there's a few exceptions. One of them is Trident. Trident is opaque, and that's a fine paint also. Trident makes good. It's made out of Australia. It's a really nice paint. It does very well, but it's opaque. Okay, meaning that it'll only go so dark, and you can't darken it beyond a certain point. So, for instance, it might have this might be the color of the Trident, and you might not be able to get it any darker than that. Whereas you got a transparent paint like burnt umber here. Okay, look how dark it is. I mean, it's almost black. It's so dark here because it's transparent. Transparent or translucent paints are usually darker or give you a little more ability to go and make the dark colors. That's one thing I like about transparent colors, is that you can go dark. Now, sometimes you're going to want an opaque color, and I'll talk a little bit about that later, but you can create an opaque color by simply adding white to it. White creates an opaque color, and that's called a buffer. You're buffering the color. What does buffer mean? Buffer means blocking or limiting. Okay, so if I buffer the color, I add white to a transparent, and I have an opaque color. So I can create an opaque by adding this burnt umber with white, combine it with opaque white, and that gives me an opaque color. It's really called a buffered color technically. So that's why you hear that color buffer theory and buffered colors, because the buffer means to block or limit the value. So if I don't want to go to value, say darker, let's say I want to spray that color right there, but I don't want to go too dark. Well, obviously this transparent color I could be in danger of making that too dark in there. So if I put some white in there with this, it'll protect me like a safety net to keep me from going too dark. So here, that's the reason I use it. Now, is it slower? Yeah, it's a little bit slower to sit there and stop and mix these colors than it is to just put this airbrush color in the airbrush and spray away at it. But if you're spraying this color in the airbrush and you hold that trigger on the button for too long, you'll overshoot it. Instead of this color, you end up with a color that's too dark in here. So in that case, you've got 5 choices. You guys remember the 5 choices? You got 5 options if you go too dark. Okay, and here they come. First option, kill yourself. Just give up, quit, walk away. Don't never paint again. That's the first option. Okay, I don't like that option too well. Option number 2, here's the 2. Option number 2 is start over on your painting. If you make a mistake, you've gone too dark, start your painting over. I don't like that one either, actually. Okay. Option number 3, live with it. Okay. So I got a big dark spot right there. Maybe I could turn that into a tattoo, or I could put a lock of hair on it, or I could, do something else with it. But try to live with it. That's option number 3, is try to make it work in your painting. Change the painting or do something to try to live with it, so you don't have to alter everything. All right. And there's a lot of artists that do that. One of my students, former students, Craig Frazier, he is an expert at correcting those types of mistakes. If he makes a mistake like that, he is really smart at figuring a way to live with that and make that work. You can live with it. You call it a happy accident if you want to. Bob Ross does, okay, or did. Now, as I get older, I've learned to live with things. And what I mean by that, if I make a big splot right there, big like speck, a big dark spot, yeah, I don't want to leave that in there. But I've gotten to where when I was just starting out, the first few years I was starting, first decade probably I was painting, or probably first 20 years I was painting, I would sterilize that area. I would remove everything. I would try to remove that mistake and bring that back to pure white. But I've learned later that if I leave some debris there, some specks of paint in there, it actually enhances the organic quality of the image. So instead of sterilizing an area when I make a mistake, I remove some of it, but I leave some of it behind. And that's helped me. And I'll talk a little bit about that during class, where I do that. I might splatter something. Well, as long as it's not too obvious, I might just erase it back a little bit and leave some of those spots and things. And that creates a little bit more of it takes away the sterility of the paint a little bit. It gives you a little more of a realistic feel. Because if your paint is too perfect, it's not going to look like a real person anymore. It's going to look like a mannequin. So you need to leave a little bit of grunge, I want to. I mean, not too much, because you got too much, it's going to look really weird, especially a female portrait face, But no face is perfect. There's always a little, I want to call them imperfections, but little artifacts that represent a living creature. And you want to put those in there. There's not, the skin is not perfectly smooth everywhere. You can see on your reference photo, there's little freckles and dots and things like that in there. Maybe a stray hair, maybe a wrinkle, things like that. You want those in there. Those are going to help enhance your final image. So option number 3, live with it, is something that could be useful to us. Okay, so let's go to option number 4. Option number 4, if you got a big splatter right here, would be to remove the paint. Okay, take it off. You put it on, let's take it off. How do you do that? Well, I take it off by a tool. I could take an eraser. I could take an eraser and erase it off. I could take a blade right here and scratch it off. Now, the blade, though, doesn't work on everything. You can't take a blade of this kind of paper and scratch that off. If you do that, you're going to destroy the paper. There's very, very few surfaces that will tolerate the blade. Very few. There's probably maybe 2 or 3 in the world that you can purchase that will handle a blade. Okay, the airbrush paper I have is one of them. Clayboard is another one. Clayboard will tolerate the blade. And the other is the UPO. And the UPO paper is a synthetic paper you can buy, similar to my airbrush paper, but it is similar to another paper called Lana Vanguard that will tolerate the blade a little bit. You can scratch a little bit on UPO, but it after a few scratches, it starts failing. So it'll let you get away with a few scratches on it, but that's about it. With the paper I made, you can scratch for a long time. Now, why do we need to scratch? Well, you'll see that in some cases we want to remove a mistake or enhance it or create some texture. You'll see us doing that on there. And the way I come up with the paper was, there was a few illustration boards that used to tolerate the blade. One was CS10, a paper made by, it's been gone for 25 years now. It was, I forgot the name, Frisk Products made it. And it, of course, went extinct also. And then another one called Crescent 9208 came out, and that was incredible. You could scratch on it with a blade, but they quit manufacturing that, I guess, about 12 or 15 years ago, too. And I bought all I could find. I bought $4,000 worth of board because I knew I was teaching. But even with buying that much board, as I was teaching 30 classes a year, I saw that supply dwindling and getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Eventually, I saw the incoming. So I started looking for other boards. I bought every kind of board known to man, pretty much. Every board I come out and test it to scratch it to see if I could take a blade and scratch on it to scratch paint off. And every time it destroyed the board. You've seen it. If you try to scratch on this, it just destroys the surface and it looks really bad. So again and again and again. And I could not find a single one. Now UPO was fairly promising, but I couldn't get it to do exactly what I wanted to. So I worked with a company called Hahnemühle out of Germany, and they had started a synthetic paper, and their synthetic paper showed promise, but they couldn't perfect it. So we worked back and forth for about 2 years and to get the tooth just the way I wanted it. And once it was done, then we started manufacturing. So that's where this paper comes on. You've got some of that paper that was sent to you, and that's on it's double-sided, and so you can scratch on both sides and all that good stuff. All right, it's synthetic paper actually. Synthetic means a petroleum-based product. It's basically like a plastic paper. And there, every now and then I might come out here of another paper that can scratch, but when I tested it with the blade, it's really not scratchable. And if you're not going to scratch on the paper, it doesn't matter. You can use pretty much any illustration board. I use hot press illustration board. I prefer that because it's smoother than cold press. So cold press is bumpy and hot press is smooth. So when I'm airbrushing, I prefer the hot press if I'm not going to scratch. If I'm going to scratch, I definitely want to use this paper on there. Okay. So that's the surface that we're using, and that's the paint. Okay, now that's option 4 is to remove it with a blade, or the other thing you can use what's called a dowel. Now, I don't have a dowel here. I should have one, but I don't see my dowel. The dowel is basically it's a stick made of white oak. I do have one here, white oak. Now, why white oak? Okay, here it is right here. It's basically a dowel made of white oak that is sharpened in a pencil sharp. That's all it is. It's really simple. And the reason I found out about this is I was drawing something with a pencil, and my pencil lead broke out, and I didn't know it was broken out, and tried to draw on some paint, to draw some line art on some paint, and it made a scratch in the paint. I'm like, oh my gosh, look at this. I can scratch out of this, and I don't have to use the blade. Now, what's the advantage of that? Well, with a blade, you cannot hold it like a pencil. If I try to hold this and scratch out things with a pencil with a blade, that's death to my painting. Why? Because if you hold at this steep angle, it's going to dig a furrow into your surface. Even with the special paper we're using, you still damage it. So when you use the blade, you have to hold it so that the blade, the bottom of this blade, or this part here of the blade, is parallel to the surface. Okay, so it needs to be almost parallel. So I can't hold it like this. I've got to lay it down and kind of get it so it's laid down like that. So it's barely, the front is barely touching, or in the back of it's not touching at all, and scratch like that. And that kind of gets old after when trying to hold it and scratch like that at that angle is not very comfortable. Okay, I see I've got somebody coming back in here. Let me get you back in there. Okay, all right. So I lay down here on the side of here like this, and I'm trying to get my blade to be where it's just barely touching the surface of it and not at an extreme angle. Okay, so I'm just trying to take that top layer of paint off. Okay. All right, so Don is back. Don, you're here. Okay, I see. I just admitted you back in the room, so make sure you're there. Okay. All right, so sometimes you might get bumped off too. I apologize for that. With this program, I've noticed that it sometimes will kick you off for no reason. That case, I try to notice it. Just try to log back in, and we'll get you back in here. I apologize because Zoom, as great as it is, it's got some bugs in it, and that is very problematic for me because we often need to conduct a class, and we can't always. So let me see if we can get back to it. All right, so that's the dowel. Now let me talk a little more about the dowel real quick. The dowel is made of white oak. You can buy it in poplar and you can buy it in red oak, but I've tried those and they're not quite as good as the white oak. White oak is a stronger oak and more resilient. Now you'll find out if you got a soft like poplar, and this is I think this is poplar right here. It's soft, and I don't think you can see the tip, but it gets dull very quickly and it's quit scratching. Now sometimes you'll notice you'll scratch a little bit and it doesn't work. Try rotating it just 2 or 3 degrees, and sometimes you get a better surface. But I'll get my white oak. White oak looks the same. I know they call it white, but it's not white. It looks white, but I mean, the name says white, but it's not. It'll look very similar. You can't really tell easily by looking at it. Maybe with red oak you can tell. But I tried red oak. I tried poplar. This is an old poplar one here, so I won't be using it. But if you can find white oak, that's the hardest part. Finding white oak dowels is extremely difficult. It takes a long time. But we do sell them. They're really cheap, and you've got one now, so you won't need one. You probably won't need another dowel for 4 or 5 years. Just be careful sharpening. Don't over sharpening it. Okay. And because the wood is harder with the white oak, it's a little bit easier to. It's more resilient. Okay. All right. So that's that. And the other thing is you can also remove the paint with sandpaper, or you can use this liquid right here, the Windex. You can spray it on there and it'll come completely. In fact, this is more gentle. If I had a speck on here, I could erase off a scratch off. But I found out if I put some of this on a Q-tip or a cotton ball, I can actually remove that speck more cleanly with less stress to the paper than anything. So this is the least stressful on the surface compared to the abrasive types of removal products that you use, like the dowel or the eraser or the blade. Okay, so it's more gentle on the surface. Okay, however, it's a little more difficult to use because let's say I've got a spot right there, I need to remove it. Well, I'll go and it'll remove all the paint. It'll be a white speck in there with a hard edge on it. So that's where the danger of using this is. I found that if I've got a speck on this, and let's say I've got paint here, and I've got I paid a little spray on a spot on there, maybe some a speck from tip dry lantern on there. I'm probably better off using this eraser here, this softer eraser, because it'll actually give me a little bit ability to remove it very lightly, a little bit at a time, instead of just taking off the problem with the liquid, the chemical removal with the Windex, the ammonia in it. It just removes a big white space, it removes all of it. Here, I can gradually lighten it up by just moving it over very lightly until the paint wears off, until it gets light enough for me to be happy, okay? So if you go too dark, you can lighten it up with this too. The challenge is that when you use this, it creates texture, okay? That's a consequence of that. Sometimes texture is good, sometimes not. If you're doing a woman's face, too much texture is probably not desirable. In fact, I don't think a lot of women like texture in their face when you're rendering. So you got to add a little bit of something, a little bit of texture to keep from being too sterile. Otherwise, you look like a mannequin. But be aware that the removal method, option number 4, creates texture. Okay, so that's the consequence of that. Okay. Now the spray bottle that I'm using is Windex. So in this spray bottle, so Don, you didn't get to hear that. This is Windex, just simple Windex. It's not watered down. If you're in Europe, you can't get Windex with ammonia in it, and you need a Windex with ammonia. Don't get it without ammonia. It's the ammonia that doesn't reconstitute paint. It re-wets the paint is what it basically, it dissolves the paint. The amine, and it's called re-wettable with amine or ammonia. That's what you want. And if you're in Europe, you can get ammonia from the pharmacy and dilute it to about 2 or 3%. You really don't need a strong amount. And that's what you can use as cleaning solution. And put them on these spritz bottles and spray, okay? Now, a lot of people put ammonia in their airbrushes. Okay, great. It cleans out fantastic, as long as you don't spray it through your airbrush, okay? When you put it, so I'll see people put it in the cup here. They'll put ammonia in the cup, that's right, because they got to clean it. They'll put some Windex in the cup, and that's great. It cleans out beautifully. But then they push that button down and spray it all out. Well, what happens when you're doing that? You're putting that stuff in the air, okay? You don't want to breathe that stuff. Ammonia is not good for your lungs, okay? So do not do that. What are you going to do? How do you get that? Well, first of all, I'm going to take, when I do this, when I clean the airbrush, I'm going to get a paper towel. This is not a paper towel, but I'm going to put this into a knot like this, a conical knot. And I'm just going to stick it in there like this I'll put some Windex in and I'm just going to twist it like this and pull it out. And I should have some a dirty thing. I throw that away. Don't use a Q-tip. Now, a lot of people use a Q-tip. That's also dangerous. Why is that? Because if you use a Q-tip or a cotton ball, I've got one right here. Let's get that in there like that. Okay. If you put one in here like that, that fiber, the cotton fiber, will break off. They're long. And if they break off, what will happen? Will go in that little hole at the bottom, travel up here and get stuck right here in the corner where that weld is, where it turns 90 degrees here. And you can't get it out. There's no way to get it out. And you can pretty much throw the cup away after that. You'll never fix that. Okay. So don't put Q-tips into your cup. Okay. Q-tips are made for the front of your airbrush. That's what I use them for. Or if you need to correct a spot on your painting, you can use it for that, but don't put them in your cup. Okay, that's death to your cup. Your cup will die. We've thrown away a dozen cups before we figured that out. Okay, like cup after cup after cup, and we were cleaning them out with the Q-tip, and eventually we realized that the Q-tip, the fibers were breaking off and getting picked up by the airbrush at the bottom, getting stuck in here. Now what about paper towels? Have cotton fibers in them too, but those are really, really short. They're so small and short that they can pass through this without getting stuck. Okay, so if a particle breaks off in a paper towel or something like that, it's not nearly as likely to cause problems like that. Okay, so still on the units. Now number 4 is to remove the paint somehow. Okay, number 5 option is to cover the paint. Cover it with something like paint, like white paint. So I could put some white paint on here, and cover that up, or I could make a lighter flesh tone and put it on there and try to cover up that spot. But that also has a consequence. And what is the consequence of that? Well, the consequence of that, my friends, is something called, hear that? That's somebody knocking at the door. Who is it? It's Mr. Color Shift. Okay. So whenever you put a light color over a dark color, you get a color shift. What is a color shift? A color shift is a shift toward the blue whenever a light color is put over a dark color. So if I put a white over this, it wouldn't look white. It would look like a shifted color, a bluish cast to it. Okay. Why? Because it's caused by a phenomenon called flocculation. I believe that's the term. What does that mean? Who cares what it means? It means that basically your paint turns blue whenever you put it over a darker color. Okay. Now the reason it happens is because of the molecules of pigment. Now a pigment molecule, we'll go ahead and draw a little bit here. A pigment, we call it, here's a pigment molecule like this of white. We'll just put a W on it for white. A white pigment molecule has a shell around it. A little crystal shell is transparent, but it refracts the blue. Okay, that's the problem. You wouldn't normally see this until you get a whole bunch of them together and you try to put them over something. And the light that bounces off and comes up through this, it is bluish. Okay, so it gets a bluish cast when you go back to it. Think of it like a marble. Okay, the marble with a blue cast around it. Okay, so solid in the center, but it's got a shell around it, this transparent, that refracts a blue cast. And so I want you to consider whenever you add in white, you're adding blue. So white is blue, okay, with airbrush. Now, with other paint colors, it's not so noticeable. It does happen, but when you're putting on thick paint with a brush, you're not going to see too much of that light bouncing from beneath. So another analogy would be, it's kind of like a piece of ice, an opaque piece of ice. If you had a bucket of let's see, we'll make a graphic for you. Here's a bucket. Okay, you got a bucket of ice. All right. Let's say that bucket of ice, the bottom of it is red, right? So we got all this ice in here. We just fill it with ice, and you look down on you look down on this bucket of ice. Some of that red will find its way up to the top. Okay, so the ice, like white paint, is not truly opaque because it's got that shell around it. A little bit of color comes up through it. So that color comes through, that bottom of that bucket is red. You had that for like a little bit of that red would find its way up into that. Same with this, because it's got that little blue shell on it, a little bit of that blue is visible whenever you try to cover this up. In fact, it's really hard to make it totally opaque because of this extra little shell that's around, that little transparent shell around the pigment. It's difficult to make it 100% opaque. In fact, it's hard to make it white again. If you ever try to make a white speck, a pure white speck on a dark surface with white paint, it's really not possible. You're much better off using the white of the paper for your highlights than you are trying to paint if you've got a really bright white highlight. So instead of putting white on for a highlight, I'll actually scratch off the paint to reveal my white highlights. That's much more efficient as terms of getting brilliant types of highlights. Okay, so here the options. We'll go back to the options. First option, give up. Second option, start over. Third option, remember third option, live with it. Fourth option, remove the paint. Fifth option, cover the paint. All right, if you make a mistake. Right? So the consequences, the number 4 and 5 are what most people use. The consequences of number 4 is you introduce texture. The consequences of number 5 is you introduce the color shift. All right, so keep that in mind. Now, a lot of this you probably already know, and I apologize for the redundancy. I'm just trying to make sure that we're covering our bases completely here. Okay, so let's start thinking about painting here. I think I've covered everything. Oh, compressor. The compressor I'm using, there's different types of compressors out there. At the school, we use a big industrial compressor. It's huge. It's a monstrous loud, but to deal with the noise, we just run a long hose, and so we don't have to listen to it. You may not have that option. You could use a CO2 tank, which is quiet, perfectly quiet, but you got to replace the tanks. The other option would be to get a silent compressor, different levels of what they call silent. Awada has they're using different compressors now. They're not as quiet as they used to be. The most silent compressors that are still around today would be the silent air compressors, made by Silent Air out of Texas, I believe. They are fantastic compressors, but they're expensive. They're $1,000, between $500 and $1,000 for one of those, more in some cases. But they're absolutely really, really quiet compared to everything else. There's also a California compressor that is really nice. It's kind of a compromise between a silent compressor and an industrial compressor. It's less loud than an industrial, but it's still pretty loud. So It depends on your tolerance. If you can handle a little bit of noise, then the quiet, you're paying for the quiet. So the more silence you want, the more money you're going to pay for it. All right, so bear that in mind. Anyway, all right, and remember, 22.5 pounds is the PSI I recommend. Now, oh, let me warn you about that. I found out that gauges are like computer screens. You have 5 different gauges on the same line. They're probably going to read something a little bit different, each one of them. Just like a computer screen, you get 5 computer screens up there showing the same image. They're all a little bit different. You can't really trust them. So I don't really trust 100% a gauge when I get it. You may have to go by feel as far as the correct amount of pressure. Just let me make sure that that's understood. All right, so let's go to our painting and talk about it. Okay, I'm gonna pull it up on the screen. This is I chose this because, first of all, it's not a mannequin. It's more like a girl next door kind of thing. Fantastic amount of great detail in the eyes in here. Also, we got depth of field here. Great out of focus areas. Really great blurry areas in here. So it's a really exercise your skill with the freehand, because you can't use a mask down here. A mask makes an edge. So if you use a mask, you're automatically going to get an edge. And so, if you don't want an edge, don't use a mask. So that requires us to freehand this. All right, which is fine. We'll handle that. So we talk about this, the features. We talk about the colors we're going to make, where are we going to make the colors, what colors we're going to make for this. Are we going to use opaque or transparent? Well, I usually use what's called a split buffer technique. And what does that mean? Well, buffer means to take the transparent colors and modify them with white paint to create opaque colors. But why do I use that? Because opaque colors are more accurate than transparent color. Also, there's a safety net. It will keep me from going too dark. If I've got white in the paint, there's the less risk of me going too dark with it, because that white buffers the color and protects me from going too dark. So I'm a little bit safer. And the other thing is, I'm also going to use some transparent, because transparent is a little bit faster. Transparents are more ideal for texture. If I need texture, transparents are more ideal, and they're a little bit quicker. So I'll use both on here. I'll also use transparents to make adjustments. So say I've got a color in here that needs a little more red in it, I might use a transparent over that just to bump it a little bit more red in some places, okay? So I've got, I try to mix certain colors or choose colors that are as few as possible, okay? Because I don't want to go and spend all day mixing colors. Who does, right? That's just a big pain in the butt. So I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'll usually take a color that is dominant, okay? Like this area around here is a pretty dominant color. That color in here, there's a lot of that, okay? So that would be one color. I also want to make some of the lighter colors, the highlight colors maybe, and the midtones. This is a dominant color, so a lot of this color in here. I might see, it might be the same color here and here and here. I try not to mix more than 4, say 5 colors. You could mix 100 colors in here if you wanted to, because there's many, many different values in here. But when you think about it, if you mix a color like, say, this color right here, you could probably use this color in other spots as well. You can find another place for it. Same with it. So I might mix a color like this eyebrow color that I can find a home for in other spots or other places in the face. So one way, we'll show you how to do that, how to locate the colors and how to mix them as when we get to that part of it, okay? But the other thing that's important is to make sure our proportions are perfect, okay? Because if the proportions are not perfect, then it's not going to look like that person. And to ensure perfect proportions, what I'll do is I made these photocopies, those photocopies that you received that hopefully I didn't think were accurate the first time, even though my daughter swore they were. When Des and I were looking at them yesterday, they realized they were a little bit off in scale. So yours may have fit, but ours didn't. So just for insurance, like last night I sent you another set of them. If you didn't get them, let me know and I can resend them today. But basically, I'm trying to get proportions here. Now, I want to transfer this to my painting surface, and there's several ways you can do that. One way to do it would be to project it with a projector, an opaque projector. You stick it in a projector like a slide projector, or is transparent. An opaque projector is opaque. You put the photograph in it and project it on the wall with your painting on the wall, and you just draw it, trace everything out. Another option is a light table. Light table is great, where you've got illumination from behind and you can put everything in and see through it. But it doesn't work if you've got thick illustration board. It has to be a surface that transmits light through it, otherwise you can't see it. Another method of transferring your image to your painting is the grid method, where you make a grid of everything. Okay, well, I'm sure you look at that. A grid of everything over it, and you just go grid by grid to make sure your grid corresponds to your painting, or your drawing corresponds to the grid in the painting. I also, as a note, I try to make my painting and the reference photo the same size. I want them to correspond to each other. They need to be the one-to-one, because it's like that way I don't have to transpose it mentally, small to big or big to small. I don't have to change the size of my mind. It's all one-to-one, and it works a lot better that way for me. Okay. So the other thing we're talking about to transfer would be the flip method. Now, the flip method, those of you who've been in my class before know what that is. Basically, it relies on the persistence of vision. So basically, let me kind of give a little quick demonstration of it. Okay. So I'll just make a dot here. Let's zoom in a little bit. All right. So if I've got a dot here, okay, and I've got a dot right here, okay, and I want to line those up. Let's just put them right over here like that. When I flip it back and forth, those dots are not lined, and they're moving. See it moving up and down when I flip it back and forth, okay? Let me slide over a little bit and see there. Now it's a little bit better. Okay, not quite perfect, but okay, now it's pretty much in the same thing. All right, very close to each other, right? It doesn't really move like it would if I do this. It's moving left to right, okay? You guys can see that okay, I hope. Okay, so the same principle, if I've got a drawing here of a face, and I want to maybe take a look at this, I can, that hair right there, I can flip it up, and a couple times I can start drawing it in like that. I can kind of see where everything is by laying it down there and flipping it. If it moves, it means my line or my pencil's not in the right place, okay? But I should be able to see and make that work. Like I can draw the whole drawing like this without tracing it really, just by using the persistence of vision. The same technology, you know, in movies and things like that, where you're seeing a lot of frames go by. Have you ever seen those little flip books that you did when you were a kid? You made a flip book of animation, same principle. And it basically gives you the chance to kind of check your position of everything, make sure everything's in the right position, okay? So that's another way of doing it, okay? And the other way of doing it, and I used to do long time ago, was I'll make a photocopy, and this is not a photocopy of it, but I'll make a photocopy of my original, and I would just cut out the eyes and the major shapes. This, though, is different. What you got was a line art extraction, and I used software for that. And the software I used for that was something called Simplify, all right? Simplify is made by a company called Topaz Lab, T-O-P-A-Z. However, I have some bad news for you. They don't make it anymore. They stopped making it about 3 years ago. So you have to find an old copy of it. It's basically, let me write the name of it down so you can see it. Simplify, if you can find it, by Topaz Labs, T-O-P-A-Z Labs. Topaz Labs makes some really nice stuff. They're still in business. They just quit making this product. And what it did is basically took an image. You could take an image and push a button, and it extracted the lines out of it. And you could adjust the size of the lines, whether you're getting detail or small features or things like that. It was incredible. If you could find an old copy to download, that would be what I would do, okay? It's really great for extracting. You can also do this in Photoshop. There's some Photoshop, I guess, plugins, or not plugins, but I think there's some instruction online about that. You can take that and extract it through some Photoshop tools, and that's a possibility too. But basically, this allows me to pull out the important features. Now, the computer sometimes misses, okay? Like, for instance, it couldn't deal with, there's that line right there, okay? It wasn't really sure what it was, but it did give me a hint about where it lives. There's a hint about where that edge lives, but I'm really not going to use a mask on this anyway because, well, it's a soft edge. But I use this because I want to know where the features are. I want to know where the eyes are. I want to know where the nose is. I want to know where the mouth lives, because I need to know that. Otherwise, it's not going to look like her. Now, you might wonder why it's in two pieces. Well, I put it in two pieces because there's a probability that your printer is not going to be able to print anything this big, okay? So I did it in two pieces so you could have the option of having the left side and the right side, okay? I couldn't get it all in there. So two pieces just allows us to have both sides, best of all worlds, okay? So what I need to do is I just need to cut a little mask or stencil of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get an X-Acto blade. I'm going to cut out some shapes. I'm going to show you the shapes I'm going to do. Okay. Oh, and let me answer a couple of questions here. I got a private request for a bathroom break from someone here. We'll do that in just a second. But the question is, though, first, are moisture traps needed? Okay. It depends on your compressor. Usually a moisture trap is on the compressor, but this moisture trap here is not needed. Okay. This is not necessary. It's only for ergonomics. If you have water in your line, you want to have a moisture trap. Now, water comes from the condensation, mainly from when the temperature changes. When a compressor works, it heats up the air, and when the air cools off, you get some condensation coming from it, and that can build up. And so your setup, if you can keep your compressor cool, it'll actually help with the condensation. But a moisture trap at the source of compressor is usually what I see people putting it. This, I've never taken water out of one of these, ever. I've never seen water in one of these. It's, again, more for ergonomics than it is for everything. But if you have, I would definitely recommend one on your compressor, especially if you've got a problem with water in your line. A real moisture trap. Usually it's at the source. I can't turn this camera, but with regulators, usually there's a little moisture trap underneath them that seems to work pretty well. Oil filters and moisture traps like that works. I hope that answers that question for you. Okay. All right. So I got a request for a bathroom break. So let's take about 10-minute bathroom break here. So about a quarter after. So about 20 after. About 20 after we're resumed. So you guys take a break. In the meantime, what I want you to find is something to cut on, like a piece of cardboard or something, a back of a drawing pad or something like that, and get your X-Acto blade ready, because we're going to start cutting out some shapes here when we come back. Okay. So we'll take a quick break, and I'll see you guys in a moment. I'll go ahead and pause the recording. All right, there we go. So I'll see you in a few minutes. Everybody can take a little. All right. So one of the things that we want to do is we want to make a stencil out of this. And this is for proportional. It's not going to paint it for us, but it will help us kind of know where things live. Right. So the thing I want to advocate at the very beginning is set it up so that your pieces stay connected together. Don't cut a piece out, don't cut that out pull out so it falls away. What I usually do is set it up so it's like a hinge. So basically when I'll cut around this, I'll cut around the white, and I'll get this so I can flip that back like that. Let me zoom in so you can see a little better, because it's probably hard to see. Okay. So what I've done is I've cut this out so I can actually flip this up, but I leave it connected. I'll leave it connected in the area that's really a little small spot right there, because if I don't, I'm gonna lose this. I'll never see it again. So what I'm gonna do is I'll cut this out and flip it back up like a little hatch right there. Same with this one. Now, in this case, I also cut out the center. Now, it might be too difficult to cut around some of these details. Like that's difficult to cut around. This one's not, but I still got it set so I can flip this back if I have to for the pupil. Okay. And also, I'm going to cut this out. I'm going to go around there. You don't have to go around the hair, but I went around the hair this time. So I'd like to get this piece. I'd also flip up. So let's see if I can grab it with the blade and flip it. Oh, I can't, because I missed that cut right there. So I got to go back, revisit it. Okay. Just come back and recut that like that. Come all the way down to it. And now cut that. So hopefully that'll lift out. There we go. So I can flip that back too. See that? Now make sure you leave it attached. You could make a little bit of a cut here, as long as you leave it a little bit attached so that you can access. Now, if you lose a piece, don't despair. Don't cry about it. It's okay. You can just put a piece of tape on it and keep it close by so you don't lose. Now, what about lashes? I don't cut out the lashes, but I am going to cut out this epicanthal fold right here. Okay. I'm going to cut right through the hair. I can always bring that hair back later. I want to cut it down so I can pull this down. Let's go ahead and make that cut complete. So, because I want to eventually be able to spray in that gap too. Okay. I don't feel like I'm in focus frame. Let's see if I can focus a little better. There we go. All right. So also, what about the eyebrow? I want to cut the eyebrow. Now the eyebrow doesn't have a lot of hard edges, but I want this replacement. I'm gonna cut this out. I'm just gonna cut this so I can see it right here. I'm gonna cut right through this. I don't need that hair right now. I'm just gonna cut right through the hair like that. I can always bring that hair back by scratching it back out or something like that with the blade. So I'm actually going to remove. I don't need this. I actually am going to remove that. So I'm going to remove that piece like that. So basically, what I'm trying to do is create some areas that are going to let me kind of open them up and spraying them just to kind of indicate the presence of things. I'm also going to cut this area right here underneath the lid so I get the separation between the white of the eye and the fold of the lid right there, that lower lid. I don't know what goes on here. Let's see, it comes straight up. I have to look back at the reference material and it comes over. All right. Remember, don't let it be so that you're not that things fall apart. You want to make sure that things are connected. So they're basically little hatches I'm making in here. Now, what about other places? Well, the jawline. I think I'm going to use the other mesh for the jawline because that leaves that left side of it over here. Okay. So I'm not going to cut on this one. But what about the nose? Things like that. Well, the nose definitely. I'm having trouble seeing things with the nose. So what should I do about that? Well, in that case, if you're having trouble seeing it, I'm going to recommend you draw it in with a pencil. Okay. So if you can't really see it very clearly, don't take that reference picture. I can't try to get this to stay. It doesn't want to stay because of the. I've got this board under here. Let's kind of move it so you can see it. There we go. I'll do that. All right. So let's deal with the nose here. Okay. All right. So the nose, I can't see everything. I'm looking at the reference picture and I can see some things. From the printout, I can't see it. So what I do with that? Well, I'm going to take my pencil and just kind of look at the reference material and kind of go back and reinforce some things. Okay. I think I'm going to leave this out. I'm going to ignore that for now. Okay. So I'm just going to kind of come through like this. And what I'd like to do is get that nose to be like one piece. I'm going to just double back on it. I want, you see, I want it to be one piece because I want to be able to flip that whole nose up and down. So I'm just drawing it to reinforce it. And what happens here? It looks like it, I don't really see much there. Kind of, this is going to be missing right there. But what happens here? It looks like it kind of goes like this. And I see it kind of, wow, it's so strange. Usually it comes back in, but this one doesn't. It kind of goes that way. Now, there's no line up here, but come on, I'm going to go ahead and draw this up here. Why? I want to be able to flip this whole thing back like a hat. Just back up the camera so you can see it. There we go. All right. So I want to be able to flip this whole piece like that. Even though the nose lines don't go up here, I'm still going to draw some lines in here because I'm going to be able to lift this up and peel that back. Okay. That's important. So let's get the, this is, I'm just using this, but you can use a drawing pad. The back of a drawing pad works great because if you want to cut, you don't have to have a fancy now this. In fact, I need some tape on here. I'm using, I've got a, you see me using magnets, so I've got a steel board behind this, but since this is so thick, I can't, the magnets won't pick it up. I'm trying to find this in this tape. It's eluding me. There it is. I'm put a piece of tape here because I'm working vertically. You can't tell, but I'm on a vertical surface here, and gravity is affecting me. Right? So I need to do this. I need the blade. Look at my blade. It's on the floor. Okay, let's pick that up. And so the nose, I'm going to get in here, and I'm just going to go in here like this and see if I can make that happen. Now, is it more important for it to be smooth and accurate? So I want to be smooth with my lines here. All right, so I'm just going to come through. It's not, my vision is not so great, guys. I've got some pretty bad cataracts going on. So my vision has gotten better over the past 5 years. So I apologize for the quality of my work sucking pretty bad in the past 5 years, but hopefully it'll get better. I got to get some surgery going on this year to replace those bad cataracts. It's hereditary. All right, so I'm just going to run this up here like this. And I'm going to, oh, I forgot to do this one. I'm going to try to make it, I'll try to mark this where you can see it actually with a highlighter so you can see where I made my cuts. Because you probably, I'm sure you cannot see where I made my cuts here on the video. Okay, so the idea is for me to flip this whole piece up. I can't, it's not quite working, is it? Let's get it where it is working. I want to flip the whole thing up in one go. If I can make that happen here. It's stubborn. There we go. Okay, here it comes. It's finally coming out. Here we go. So I want to be able to do this. That's why I do this. I want to be able to flip it up and work on it. I also want to be able to do this. I want to be able to flip it down like that and use that stencil to get the shadows under the nose. So that's the reason I added these extra cuts up here. I'm not going to spray up in here, but I want to be able to flip it back and forth. Now let's look at the mouth. This mouth is pretty obvious. I'm going to ignore the line going through it, and I'm just going to come through like this. And this is not really perfectly smooth. So I got a couple of little zigzags in some places here. I want to try to pay attention to that. But luckily with her lipstick, it's very clear where her boundary is here. So it's not ambiguous at all. We should be able to do it. But remember that there are not perfectly straight lines through here. You can see there's a couple of zigzags when I'm cutting. I'm trying to follow it. Now, if you're not sure about where they are, go in with a pencil first, and that'll help you. All right, there, okay. And I'm also going to leave this attached over. Let's leave it attached over here on one side. Okay, now this is a strange. I'm seeing some weird things going on. Let's cut through here. I see it going up and down right here. Oops, that's a bad cut. Let's try to do a better job of that. I see kind of weird things. I don't really know if that's the computer picking up something when it did the scan that really doesn't belong there. I'm going to guess maybe it shouldn't have done that. I'm going to leave that attached on the left side. So I should be able to take this whole thing. I didn't do a good job of that. Okay, like this, and kind of bend it back, leaving it attached, just barely attached right there. Same with the bottom. And the bottom, I'll usually do is attach it to the other side. I try to attach it with a line. It's not close. See right there in the photograph, that line kind of fades out. That's why I'll leave it attached, because that's a good place. There's no hard edge there. So I'll go up in here like this with this, and I'll go across the bottom. Oops, let's do a better job. Now I'll just follow that, trace that edge out here like that. And all I'm doing for this is to help me manage the overspray and put things in position. That's why I'm trying to get things in the right position here. Like I want to know where the lips are. And so here I should be able to put this down. If I can get that out. Like that. That's not looking too good, is it? What's going on there? You got a little bit longer cut. There we go. All right, so there, I got that flipped back like that. So that's I can always put that back and put the other one back like that. Leaving little hatches, and that helps me a lot when it comes to determining things. Of course, you don't have to sit there and watch me do all of it, because the other eye is the same way. In this case, though, I'm going to choose to, I'm going to try, first I'll go from the center in outward. So I'm going to take this part first and do that part. Now, I'd like to, if I could leave that attached, I will. I don't know if I can do that or not. Okay, but you can always scratch this out. I don't know if I can get away with this, leaving this attached. So I'm trying to leave that attached to the hair if I can. I don't know if it's I can get away with it. We'll see. We'll know in a moment. All right, so I've got this going. Let's see. All right, that's working. And let's cut out the bottom. Now, I'm not going to try to save the pupil because it's going to be black. So I'm not going to try to save the inside of that. I'm going to let that fall away. Okay. I don't know if you can see that or not. You probably can't see that, but okay, you see that I've actually left a hole in the pupil. See my skin, you can see my finger, there we go. So I've actually removed that in it. So the pupil can go away. I didn't quite get the inside of that working, but you don't have to keep the pupil, it's optional. But I do want to keep the iris. I want to be able to flip the iris. Why? Because I need to lay this iris down to paint the white of the eye back in. Okay, because the white of the eye is not white as paint. So I need to be able to flip that back down. Okay, I also want to see the boundary up here if I can. So I'm going to leave it attached right here. Let's get the boundary right here and right here. And kind of come up here. So the idea is that they've attached. That's not working too well, is it? That's pretty bad. That's because I missed it. Let's get that part right there. Now that works. Yeah, that works. Okay, so flipped. Okay. I think the problem here is that I've got a gray background. You can't really see the difference, can you? But hey, if I put a little piece of paper behind it, now you can see, how this is flipping back and forth with my exercise that Des and I did yesterday. All right. And so I want to know where things live. Like I want to know where this lashes live, where they belong. So I might just make 2 lines through here like that. Okay, and I want to see where that lives. The hair I don't really usually render out. I kind of leave that. I can add that. That's an add-on later, and I don't really try to cut that out. You might cut it out for position. Like I might go in here and just cut this hair out like here, like this, just so I know where it lives. When it comes down to it. But usually here, generally, I'm not going to be using any kind of cutout. So. And I don't know why I do that. I find that hair, if I try to cut it out, I usually have with corners and inconsistencies to it. And I find it better to lay on another smoother single stencil on top of that during there, or scratch with the blade. For me, that works. No lashes, I can't really render out these lashes. I might put a cut in there just to know where they are. Okay, so if I want to find them later, I'll make a cut in there, but I'm not going to try to cut them out, like make them a stencil. Okay, I definitely want to take the epicanthal fold here. This is that line, the boundary between the top of the lid and the skin above it. I definitely want to have that available to me. Now, this is getting dangerous here because things are starting to fall apart. See that? So make sure you leave it connected somewhere. I work here like that, get up in there like that. This side I want to cut out too. Okay, I'm just going to, I don't want to let this fall out, I think. No, I'm not going to let that fall. I'm going to leave it attached to the top. Let's see if that works here. It's rare that you have this hair going through it, but actually the hair helps us because it gives us, look at what it did here, it lets us keep that highlight. That gives us some of that highlight to hang on to. Okay, here, I don't know if I'm going to take that out or not. I might just kind of leave that connected right there. You can always come back and cut it, finish cutting it out or cut a little more of it out later. You don't have to, you're not stuck with anything. I definitely need to know where the edge of that lid is right here, the lower lid. So I'm going to come up here like that and just make a cut, single cut here. Okay. Looks like the lid changes direction here, but I know it doesn't. Actually, it continues across here like that. So I'm going to come across here, bring it up like this. Okay, so that works out pretty well. As long as this stays attached somewhere. Wow, that's barely hanging on, isn't it? Okay, so that gives me a pretty good, I think that's really all I need for now. And on the other one, I'm going to probably do the jawline, but I'm not going to indicate the chin here. The chin is the trickiest. Why is that? Because it's very exposed. And if you make a corner, let's say you're cutting along here and you stop, you change direction, you'll have a corner on the chin, and that's really bad. It's very noticeable. Or if you got a corner or a bad cut on the upper lip, you can't notice that. But here, it demands to be smooth and continuous. That's tricky, okay? So to make that happen, I'm going to try to make it a cut that's smooth, and smooth is more important than accurate here. So I'm just going to go up in here right here and start the cut. And I'm just going to try to be accurate, but I'm more concerned with smoothness. So I'm just coming through here like this. It's the corners that means stop and change directions. So I'm trying not to stop and change directions. But if you do stop, try to stop in an area that's straight rather than in the middle of a curve. All right, now there's a problem. I'm going too low. So I'm going to try to come at it the other direction. Okay. So hopefully I can make up for that. Okay, so you can't really see it. Let me back up a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to get in here. I can see the line here. And I missed that curve at the bottom. See if I can make up for it by being accurate coming from the other direction. But there's a problem. I'm not very accurate. I'm off by a millimeter. But you know what? Nobody's going to notice I was off by half a millimeter there. Okay, before I start the curve, I'm going to start now. Here's where people come to the problem. They change direction here. As long as you're in the same direction, you're okay. But if you change direction here, you're going to have a bump in it. All right, so I'm just coming through here, coming through like this. Taking my time. I'm getting a little flat right there. I don't want to be flat, but it is. I'm missing it a little bit. I can blame that on my bad vision, but I need to address that. Now, here's a bump. You can't see it, but it's going to be a problem if I leave it. Okay, let's zoom in so you can see it. So I'm talking of, let me do my imitation of the Canadian. You see what I'm talking about, right? How would I? Did I do a good Canadian imitation, my Canadian friends? Probably not. Okay, I apologize for that. All right, so look, there's a problem right here. You see it right there. There is the problem because I missed the cut. I just totally missed it. In this case, I'm going to try to smooth out by cutting this part off. But that doesn't help me. Oops, I'm just making it worse. Okay. That doesn't help me with the other side of it. Okay. So I've got to realize that this is a place that is going to compromise my painting. Okay. If I leave it, if I'm not careful with it, I'm going to try my best to make it smooth. It's really hard to do that though, isn't it? You see, I'm kind of making cuts through it and it's helping it some, but it's really going to, I need to keep an eye on that when it comes to painting. I didn't do anything to fix this. Okay. This is damaged. Okay, there's you can see that little corner right there. So you got to be careful. The only thing that's going to save me is I have another stencil. Okay, so I'll remember that I don't want to use this. In fact, I might mark it and say, "Warning, Will Robinson." I don't know, maybe the young people will understand that. The older people will understand who Will Robinson is. This is a dangerous place, so I'll put an arrow next to it, warning myself that, hey, I could create a really big bump in her chin. That's very noticeable. Okay, so but I've got the other one. And that'll help me. All right, so I'm going to back the camera out and so you can say, this is all we're doing. Now, I'm not going to really cut more than that. I mean, you can cut some hairs if you want to like that, but I'm really not too concerned with that, okay? If you had more detail, you could, now for freckles and things like that, if you really want those freckles to be in the right place, you could poke a hole in it like this with a blade and twist it like that and put some, if you had to have them in exactly the same place, the place of record stuff. I'm not going to do that because I don't really care that they're in the same place. But if you did, you could, you know, go in there and just roll in there and twist it, rotate like that, make a kind of a round hole if you're going to put freckles or things like that on a person's face. Okay. All right. So where did I draw? You can't see right now. So what can I do to help you with that? Well, let me do this. Let me take a marker, a highlighter, and just kind of go over these places. So I did this cut right here, like this, and that'll help you kind of see kind of where I went with it. This might not be as easy to see, but you, at least in the lighter areas, you'll be able to see. I went through here for the boundary here. Obviously, I didn't do that one yet, but I did cut that eyebrow. You'll be able to see that when I help. Here, I went through this line right here. And obviously, you can see that one and this one here. Okay, I hope that helps. Okay, I know it's probably not always easy to see. Well, you can take a look at it. And of course, I went down here around this, and you can see the lips what I took off because where they're flipped back, if they're flipped open like that, you can see what I did on the lips. All right, so are there any questions about this? You guys be able to cut this okay? No issues? You could text me a question too if you have a question or need clarification or see something. The main thing is I didn't cut everything out. I secondly made it sure that I didn't cut it out so that everything falls apart. I need things to stay together because if I don't leave it together, it's going to fall completely apart and then I'm going to be sad, okay? I wonder if it helps me to get rid of this background and put the white behind it. Maybe that'll help you see some things that weren't as visible before, like that. I don't know if that helps or not, because you can't come in and look at it like you can when you're in the classroom. Come up and look at it and say, hey, okay, there's where you made that cut. But it's hard to see it up close. And at any point, I can zoom in a little bit if you need me to and see and help you see that. But basically, I'm cutting these shapes out. You know, be careful cutting things out. Leave these attached, you know, best you can. Epicanthal fold right here. Make sure you're cutting this out so, you know, you can pull these away and put them back. White of the eye so that you can flip the white of the eye back. I didn't do that. I should do that. Let's get that white of the eye done. I missed that cut, didn't I? There we go. So I can flip the white of the eye back because I need that. I need to be able to see where I cut, where the white of the eye boundary is. There we go. So leave a little flipping it back and forth is good. Okay, so I'll stop talking because I know I'm talking too much. I'm gonna give you guys some time to do this. So let's take our time. I want you to go real slow on this because it's so important. You do have 2 stencils. You have 2. So if you mess up one, mark it. Say, hey, there's a problem with this area right here. I'll try to do it better on the other stencil. We got 2 of them just for that purpose. All right, and on the other one, we'll do the ear, but I'm not worried about the ear yet. We're just gonna get things in the right place. Okay, so I'm gonna pause the recording and let you guys spend some time doing this. And if you have questions or want me to get clarity, let's say I couldn't see the eye. Let's say I couldn't see the right eye. Put on the chat at the bottom, just text me that, and afterwards I'll go in and kind of zoom in so you can see it a little bit better. Okay. I want you to keep on. I'll just talk a little bit. I want you to not treat this as a masterpiece. I want you to treat this as a sketch, as just a practice piece. The reason for that is because when people try to create a masterpiece in this class, they end up being so concerned about the outcome that they don't learn during it. And the idea of this class is to learn how to do stuff. It's not to come out with a masterpiece at the other end. It's to learn how to create masterpieces in the future. So if you worry about it coming out really, really great in the end, you're going to suffer, okay? Because you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to be upset when you make those mistakes. So don't do that. The idea is don't worry about the mistakes. You're going to make them. I'm going to make them. It's okay though, as long as we're learning from it. We're using this. Think of this as just a sketch that we're experimenting with. We're just having some fun with it. We're learning and trying some new things, and just have that attitude toward it. And I think that you'll end up with a much more positive experience, and you'll actually learn more because you'll remove that stress from the equation. You won't be stressing about it. So plan on not finishing it. Okay. Now, it's a possibility we'll finish it, but I don't want to try to finish. The goal here is to learn not to complete a painting. We'll get pretty far. We'll get 95% done, but I don't want you to be concerned with racing to the finish line, because what happens is you get about, the last day, you got a lot of it done, and you'll be able to see the finish line. You'll say, okay, there's the finish line. And what people do invariably is they sprint or race toward the finish line. And when they do that, they rush and they speed up. They speed up when they should be slowing down. And they're not careful anymore, and they become reckless and hurried, and the consequences are usually disastrous. They take a good painting and they ruin it at the last hour of painting because they try to rush. So don't try to rush to the finish line. Just try to go slow and stay steady with it. And I promise you the outcome will be a lot better than if you try to finish the painting. Okay. So in fact, it'll look better if you finish 85% of it, and the 85% that you did is awesome, versus going 100% and that extra 15% that you did looks like caca. Caca is a technical term. Okay. You don't want to look bad. So I'm giving you that advice because I've seen it before in the past, many, many times. I'm gonna say every class somebody does that. And then they're sad because, hey, it could have looked awesome. Even if it was unfinished, the part they did looked amazing. But then when they try to finish it, they ruin their painting. They ruin what could have been awesome. So I'm gonna encourage you not to try to finish it. We're just trying to go slow and steady and do a good job. Do the best job we can. This can be the best painting you've ever done if we're going slow and we, don't try to rush, try to be methodical. I'd rather you go too slow than too fast. You'll never, because there's a chance that you're going to, I'm going to say there's a high probability that you'll wreck your painting if you go too fast. Okay. All right. I'll stop talking about that. That was just a little extra conversation about how we're going to proceed. So don't feel hurried at all. We're going to take our time. We're going to relax. I'm going to try to give you plenty of time to do stuff, and that way you won't have to worry so much. So just keep on cutting out. If you finished, you may want to go back and refine some things, but I think pretty much once you finish, take a break, relax. I'll try to give a time. I don't want to put you guys under time pressure, but let me check. I'll do this. I'll check in with you in a few minutes, maybe in 5 minutes, and see where you're at with it. If you still need more time or somebody needs more time, no problem. Okay. Go ahead and record again. So let me talk a little bit about what we're going to do. I've got everything one-to-one size ratio. Okay. It all fits. Let's back up the camera a little bit so you can see. There we go. So it's all one-to-one on the page like that. And this, of course, doesn't fit one-to-one on the page. You can see that obviously it's not one-to-one because it's too small, right? Because everybody's finished it. So I try to set this up so this should be up against the right edge of it. But in reality, there's probably might be a little border on there, so it may not fit exactly. So what you could do, I think if I slide it over, if you look at the bottom here, there's a ghosted edge right there. You can kind of see the edge right there. I might, if I draw that in pencil, maybe it can be clearer, but my pencil has disappeared. There it is on the floor. Okay. So there's a boundary right here. There's that, you can see I kind of marked it, which corresponds to this edge right here, the edge of the thing right here. And it just so happens that that fits pretty well. So I think you could be pretty safe to push this up against the edge here. Now the other option is try on the left edge. Let's take a look at it and see how that corresponds. If I line this up with the ear, you can see the ear right here at the top. Line it with the ear, it doesn't really, it actually has some overlap. You can't really see this, but if you look carefully, there's the, you can see the overlap right there at the top. So this is actually, if I line it up perfectly with the edge of the ear, it's not going to fit quite, because there's the overlap right there. So you see that? So I've got to make a decision. I think I'm safer on the right side, lining up. So if I'm careful with it, I think I can move it over, and you see this mark. Now you could trim this off, this edge off. So I think I might do that. I might just trim this off, and that way I can lean it flush up against the edge, because this edge right here, that mark right here, should be the edge of the paper, the edge of everything, I'm going to guess. Okay, I'll look carefully. It's pretty close to the edge of everything. Let's compare again. So, you know, you see I do a lot of measuring, a lot of time measuring. I think that's what I like to do. So I'm going to trim this edge off here with the blade and the straight edge. I'll just go up to the screen for a moment, and I'm going to trim. So what I'm doing, there's a very, on this thing we just cut, there's a, you can look and see a very light ghosted edge right here. That's the edge of the boundary of the image right there, okay? So I'm going to trim this edge off so that way I can just run it right to the edge of the paper and feel pretty confident that that's accurate. The other option is just kind of line it up and let some overhang, but I don't want to overhang the paper because I don't really like doing that. I feel like I'm not always lined up. I don't feel like I'm square and all that. So I'm going to try to just cut this off with a ruler, a perfect edge if I can. So I'll be back in a moment. I'm going to pause the camera for that, and I'll be back. I'm going to trim that. Okay, so what I did is I trimmed off, but I also trimmed the top of it off because I noticed there was some extra white flashing at the top. And I noticed that now if I hold up to the image, let's get lower this in here. Now if I hold up to the image, it actually, I've got everything inside this is the live image, okay, the real image, okay. So now I can make some decisions. If I want to leave a low white border around it, like that is, I can, or I can run it all the way up to the edge like this. Now, if I leave a white border around it, it actually fits a little bit better, okay? But that's up to you. I'm going to leave a very slight white border at the top and just like the smallest of it. It's just like really tiny, you know, if you can see it. And I do that because I'm going to try to make it correspond to the reference photo. So I'm going to do that like that. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Now once I get down there, I'll put some tape on it. Let me put some magnets on it real quick. These are magnets, so I've got steel behind it. And the magnets are called buckyballs, B-U-C-K-Y-B-A-L-L-S, buckyballs. You can get them online, and they're basically little round magnets. Now, of course, magnets don't work without a steel panel behind it. For steel panels, you can get a dry erase board, a magnetic dry erase board, which is pretty cheap, or you can buy steel. I've got 22 gauge galvanized steel. Why galvanized steel? Because you got water-based paint. If it's not galvanized, you'll get some rust. Okay, so make sure you use galvanized steel if you're buying raw steel. But if you're buying what dry erase board, is already protected, so you don't have to worry about that. So magnetic dry erase board, it'll have a frame around it, and you don't want that frame. Get rid of the frame, and that's a good backing. And the buckyballs are great alternative to tape. Believe me, tape is fine, but tape never sticks when you want to, and it sticks too much when you don't want it to. So the buckyballs are a great alternative. So I'm kind of make sure everything's square on here. And of course, a lot depending on how I made that cut, right? So I'm looking at it, I'm trying to make sure everything's the way it should be. You know, just trying to make sure everything's lined up as it should be. And that looks pretty good. I feel pretty good about that. You know, I'm not so, not worried. I'm gonna still put a little piece of tape on the left side. Let's grab a little piece of tape down here just in case those magnets try to move. I'm gonna raise it back up here a little bit. Yeah. All right, like that. There we go. Okay. I'm gonna pause right there and kind of wait for you guys to get situated. Now, one of the things I use a dump cup, and you could use a cup like a bottle. But basically, I've got a cup full of paper towels, okay? And I use that to, when I'm changing colors, I'll spray this. I don't want to just spray into the air because that's going to introduce things to the air. So a dump cup is a good place if you want to change color. Now, I just run water through my gun and just kind of spray into that thing right there. The other thing you want to be conscious of is overspray in your room, okay? And to hell with that, I recommend getting some kind of either wearing a mask, okay, or getting some kind of device that cleans the air. And I've got a blog that shows you how to make a homemade air cleaner on schoolofrealism.com. that if you're looking to make something real cheap, you get a box fan and some bungee cords and just a simple little air filter, and you can throw that together, and that'll actually give you a pretty good filter, pretty efficient. But the thing is, you want to use a MERV 9 or 11 type of filter. You don't want to be too fine a filter because it won't allow air movement, but you don't want it to be too coarse where it allows the particles to flow through. So a 9 or 11 MERV, MERV, is optimal for airbrush particles, okay? And you want to stick that fan as close to your source of contamination, or as close to the source of where you're spraying as possible, in order to realize the best benefit of that air cleaner, okay? And a box fan is pretty quiet. You have to admit, it's not loud like some other fans, okay? It's quiet enough to work. And if it's too loud, I usually wear headphones when I'm painting anyway, so the noise isn't really going to matter so much, you know? But it's definitely a good way to remove that paint from the air, because it lingers in the air for hours, and you're going to be breathing that stuff in, and that's just not really healthy, okay? So let's check and see what I've got in my airbrush. I'm going to put a couple of drops of this color in here. This is just burnt umber. And the reason I use burnt, I just need a color, something on there that's going to mark the places. I want to mark, almost like sketching out where things live on here. Still got blue in my airbrush. Let's see if I can get that blue out of there. Looking for some brown in a moment, guys. Wow, that blue is persistent. I'm still getting blue out. What's going on here? Also, guys, in the paint, you want to make it shake. You want to shake it up until you hear that rattle in the bottom. That's a ball that agitates, and you want to make sure that's loose. Sometimes when paint sits for a while, that ball will get glued to the thick paint at the bottom, and it doesn't do its job. So you want to shake it hard to make sure that you're getting the full movement of the ball inside to agitate that paint. Let's try to put a little more in here. See if I can finally get some brown out of this thing. There we go. Finally. Okay. All right. So you guys about ready to move on? Does anybody need some time? You guys doing okay? All right, I'm just checking the messages here. Looking at messages. No new messages here. We should be okay. All right. So I think we're good. Okay. So if you guys are ready and I'm ready, I think we can go ahead and start applying this. All right. So if anybody needs more time, let me know, and we can slow down a little more. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I've got this taped to it, and all I want to do now, I just want to mark it. That's all I want to mark position of stuff. Where does it live? You know, where are things? So I've taped it to it because I don't want anything to move. At least 2 pieces of tape down there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip some of these. I'm just going to mark them very lightly. I'm just going to go ahead and mark. First thing let's do the pupil here. Flip that up. Hold things down with my finger, and I make sure I'm recording here. Am I recording? Yes, I am. All right. So hold that down with my fingers, and just go in. And you can go ahead and be generous about this. Okay, you can throw it on there because it is going to be super dark later anyway, so it's not going to hurt anything to go ahead and throw some paint on there. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to flip up this other one, this one next to it. And the best tool I have for helping you with that, a little helper, is the blade. I'll take the blade, and it helps kind of lift things up in a more precise manner. Flipping that out of the way too. And of course, once that's done, use your finger to hold everything down and get in there and just spray that in there. So this is pretty dark. So again, I'm going to be pretty generous with the paint here. You can be pretty aggressive with it here. Don't flood it though. Just get it in there. So you're making it, you're establishing some things. Okay. So let's go ahead and pull this back to this other part. Again, I need the blade to grab onto that. So let's take the blade and grab onto it with the blade. Lift that up like that. And of course, I want to spray a little bit lighter. Well, actually, I don't want to spray lighter, because I can go ahead and be generous again here. Yeah. Oops. Flipping that down. And what this does is just shows me where things live. I just want to know where it's live. Now, when we start thinking about things like the eyebrow doesn't have a hard edge around it. Okay, so what I'm going to do with the eyebrow, I want to ghost it in. Just barely put some in there, but I don't want a super hard edges. So I'm just going to barely put that in there. Why? I just want to know where the position of it is. So see how little I put in there? Barely put that in there because I don't want to make a super hard edge in there. It's going to be a hard edge, but it'll be so light that it hopefully won't matter. Other places here, I want to start grabbing, maybe mark this in here. So I'm going to pull this lid down, kind of go through it like this, kind of put an edge here like that, just to mark that position of that fold there. Okay. I don't want to pull that back because I don't want to spray the white of the eye. Let me see if I can zoom in a little closer for you guys. Okay. All right. Maybe like that. Okay. All right. So I don't want to spray and pull this back and spray the wire, but I don't have a way I can pull this back, okay? It's not easily done because I can't flip those lights back. So I'm gonna try to spray in the crack a little bit just to show the border of it. Now, if you can't see what you did, what you can do is just flip it back and check your work. And I'll show you how to do that. I'll put another piece of tape on it somewhere else, so I'll hold it still, okay? And I'll kind of lift this tape off. And let's just peek back under and see what's shaking, okay? So there we go. You kind of see what we've got started here. It does look really weird, doesn't it? Wow, it looks so strange. But anyway, that's everything's in the right place. You can see how we go to this, and I know where that lives. But I didn't mark that. I wanted to mark that, and nothing happened, right? Nothing came out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull that back a little bit, leaving the white of the eye covered. Okay, I've got the white of the eye covered. Pull it back. You can see it right now, the edge here. And now I'm going to go in and spray on the left top part of that stencil, like that. So when I flip it back, that's where the edge of the eyelashes start. Okay, because if I sprayed in here, lifted the white of the eye out, I'd have a problem. What I should have done is cut this black part out so I could lift that up and spray. But since I couldn't do that, I can hold the white of the eye down and spray above that white of the eye stencil. I hope that makes sense to everybody, okay? And so I'm just looking around. I don't want to really spray around this bottom of this too much now because it's a very light line. So if I do spray here, I gotta be more careful with it. So I'm gonna try to spray in there, but I don't really think that's gonna be a good idea. Why? Because this line, if it's too dark, it's gonna look really bad. I'm talking about the boundary between the lid and the white of the eye. It's so dangerous to do that because I don't want a dark line. So, because look at the reference, it's a line, but it's not so dark. So I'm gonna see if I'm gonna take this blade and push it up a little bit. And see what I've done is I left a gap in there. I've got a gap in there now. And I'm gonna spray in the gap very lightly, just to indicate where it lives. So let's take it and just spray across it, let's test it and spray right like that, a light line like that, okay? And let's see if anything went through. Did anything go through? Well, I don't know. Yes, it did. Okay, so I got a line through there. You see it right there. Lightly, okay? Don't go heavy. If you go too heavy, you can always erase it off, but try to stay light with these. This is just the sketch. Think about the sketch. I'm not trying to go to finish, okay? I think one thing would help if I darken that right iris a little bit. So I think I can go back in there. I feel pretty good about it. Darken at least the base of it here. Oops, pull that back and get it a little bit darker across the bottom like that, like around it. And also the inside of that pupil is pretty dark. So let's go ahead and get a little more aggressive with that. Okay, that's better. Now let's see what we got. So now we start to look a little more like that. This kind of looks weird to have this left side dark and the right side light. So I add a little bit more to it. I don't go too dark, but I definitely want to try to even it out. That's the danger of having that line through it. Okay, you lose continuity. So that's why when the other parts of the face, I've decided I don't want to do the hair. I'll lay the hair on it later because trying to get continuity between left and right when you work on two sides like that is a little bit difficult. Ideally, you probably have them both flipped up at the same time, and that'll make life a lot easier. Okay, we'll go over to the other on the right and do the same thing. We can kind of work over here on the right. And then I'm going to stop and let you guys do it. Okay. So first order of business is just going to get the pupil going. Okay. I can see kind of the bottom of the pupil right there. Let's see if I can make that happen. Yeah. Okay. Just get that in there. Ooh, I flooded it. Did not mean to do that. Okay. Let's pick that up and put this white of the eye in there where it lives, where it needs to live, and get in here and kind of make a little bit of. It's mostly dark. The eye's mostly dark around the edge, around the outside edge. Okay, so that's why you see me being a little more generous with the paint there. Okay, what about up in here? What happened up in here? I really can't see too much going on here. I can see some eyebrow. Now over here, the eyebrows are a lot easier to deal with because I actually do have an opening for them like that. Okay, so I actually have a space for the eyebrows over there. Let's take a peek and see what we're doing here, guys and girls. All right, so let's see what's happening. There we go. So you see the eyes are beginning, and let's get this other side here. Now here's the problem. I've lost this piece right here. I don't know where it is. There's a piece of the inside part of that's gone. That's the part I warned you about. If it disappears, you know, there's no telling where it went now, okay? It could be anywhere in this room, okay? That's the problem, is that it's gone. And when they go away, they kind of go away forever. You know, you'll see maybe 5 years from now when you're doing something else, you say, oh, there's that eyebrow or eyelid or whatever the piece is. But right now that's gone. And the problem with that is that I need that part to help me with this. So in reality, it didn't break off. What happened was it actually is still there. Okay, believe it or not. And what's happened is hiding from me. Where did it go? Well, it didn't break off. It looked like it broke off in the moment of panic there. But what happened? It's hidden right there. See it coming out? So, you know, before you get all worried about something, check to see where it's. It might still be attached. In this case, thankfully it was. But that could have easily been disappeared, and you would. They did. Once it disappears, it's like even if your room is like a clean room, it's sterile environment. For some reason, parts and pieces find a way to hide from you. Okay, so I'm just going to add this over here. I'm also going to add a little bit to the right of this. I can see this to the right. This is pretty dark up there, so let's go ahead and darken that down a little bit. Okay. Now there's some highlights right here. I'm going to have to add those later. Okay, I didn't cut them out. It's hard. It's impossible to cut all the detail, so I don't worry about the detail. I can write the highlights out there by removing the paint. Let's take a look and see what we have. All right, there we go. All right, so it's working. I kind of feel like that line's a little thick in there, though. This the hair's a little thick in mine compared to the rest. That's the danger of having the hair cut out with a stencil. Okay, a little bit too thick. I'll have to deal with that later. But I actually create more work by pre-cutting these hairs out like that, the negative space, than I would have just made the eye and add the hair later. Okay, but for demonstration purposes, I'll show you. Let's go ahead and go. It looks like I got a fairly decent shape there. I don't think it's accurate. I think this is missing some stuff here. But for now, I'll just kind of ghost in very lightly, just as a suggestion of where it lives, okay? Now, a lot of people will see this line at the bottom here and want to make a render of it, okay? This line right here. But there's no real obvious line there. Okay, look at the reference photo. It's very, very subtle, okay? So do not go in and draw this in here, okay? Unless you could do it with something super light. Because if you do that, it's going to look really bad, okay? I am going to go ahead and establish a little bit of the lips in there, okay? Let's just go in there with the lips. And maybe a little bit right here. Okay, and I want some separation lips. I'm going to cover the bottom lip up and just kind of gently go in and ghost in the top there. Actually, it's pretty dark, so I can be a little more generous here, but I don't want to go as dark as I do with the eyes, because this time, I don't want to get where she's going too goth. She's got some pretty dark lipstick on, but I don't want to get too much. So let's pick that up and see kind of where that is right there. It looks pretty strange, I'm sure. And the nose has got shadow below it, okay, not above it. So most of the shadow is beneath the nose. So I'm going to flip this up like I talked about doing. You can put a magnet up if you want to hold it down like that. And now I'm going to look at the reference, and the reference is going to tell me that's a nostril, okay, that's going to be dark. This is a dark nostril here, that's going to be dark. Now I've got a little piece of something here. I'm going to flip that back out of the way. I don't want that in there at the moment. And I'm going to use this to kind of soften this up now, kind of make it a little bit more preparation. I'm using this to define the nose. It's very light. Now, where do you think the people make mistakes here? They go too dark. Remember, this is just a very, very light kind of dusting of things, just to establish position. We're not trying to finish things or render things out. We're just trying to get the position of things. I definitely don't want to spray up into here because there's no line up in here. So let's take a look at the nose, kind of see how I've got it. I've got it indicated to suggest about where the pieces of the parts of the nose are. I could probably go ahead and define that a little better too. I didn't really do that very well. Let's lift that up and put a little bit of overspray around there. Now, if you're worried about getting going too dark, you can always spray on the mask and let the overspray create the edge here like this. Okay, so I kind of ghosted it in by spraying on the mask and let the overspray bounce over onto the surface. And that's called the bounce technique, the bounce method. Okay. All right, so that's a pretty good finish for the eye. I think I'll stop right there. Not for that, that's as far as I want to go with it. I know we cut the mask out for the chin and everything. I don't want to spray that yet, okay? Well, I'll go ahead and spray it just for position. This is burnt umber, by the way. Yeah, that's the answer to the question. Burnt umber, okay? But really you use any color, burnt sienna, whatever color. I'm trying to get a warm color. So guys, I'm gonna suggest the chin. I'm gonna just show you how lightly I'm gonna go to make this jawline. And I'm nervous about showing it to you because when I show it to you and you do it and you go too heavy with it, you're going to wreck your painting. So instead of going heavy with it, just spray on the edge, what I do is I notice on the reference there's no edge right here. So it disappears. So look at the reference. See right there in that spot? It's gone. It picks up right here. This is called a loss of fan edge. I see a little bit of it here. I don't see it right in here, but I see a little bit here. So I'm going to spray right in here like this. I'm not spraying it on the edge. I'm spraying near the edge. See that? And the reason I'm doing that is because I don't want a heavy line. I'm also going to bring it back up here where it picks up again like this. Okay, barely. And I'm going to show it to you because I want you to see that we're not putting much paint down here. Okay, if you can look, I don't know if you see how it's kind of ghosted in there. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking to ghost it in. I don't want to go as dark as the reference yet. Since I'm just sketching. Okay, but that line disappears. There's there's barely a line in here. I don't see much line, and I can barely see a line there. Now I'll indicate it here, but I need this to be super light. Super light means don't spray directly on the edge, spray near the edge. So I'm going to run through here like this a little bit. Okay, just barely through there like that. And I was about maybe a half an airbrush length away when I did that. And hopefully that's giving me that kind of ghosted edge that shows me where the boundaries are, okay? That's not bad. So I'm going to leave it there. I'll remove the mask so you can see everything. I got it taped, so I should be able to just kind of flip this mask out of the way like that, leave it taped. Okay, I'll back the camera up so you can see kind of what we're looking at. It looks pretty strange, doesn't it? She looks really weird. And this girl is actually, she's on Facebook. I think, not Facebook, she's on Instagram. I should write her this morning and tell her that we are painting her. And she's an artist too. I tried to get her to join the class, but her schedule didn't allow. She wanted to come in and take it. Let's see if I can remember her name. Some Persian. Let's see if I can find her here on Instagram. While you guys are doing that, go ahead and paint. While you guys are doing that, let's see if I can get her up here. All right. Yeah. All right, guys. So I'm putting the tape down here at the bottom so that I can hold this in a position. I'm going to lock it down. Put 3 pieces of tape on there. Again, if you have tape, it's going to destroy that reference. So make sure you put the tape in an area that's not sensitive to destruction. Maybe a blank spot like that. Okay. Now, once I do that, then I can kind of move these magnets off to the side a little bit. And the idea here is to flip this up and down like that, to be able to move this up and down so I can see it. Let's get it back in here so you can see. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit more so you can see where we're at. And when I flip it back and forth, you can watch this area in here. You can see that my eye's not accurate. See that eye, that curve that I cut was not very round. See, I've got a flat spot here in that. And that's no bueno for me, okay? I'm a little disappointed in myself for not doing a good job. But what can you do about that? Well, if you have a stencil, around circle stencil, you can do that. I don't know if I've got one here. I don't think I've got one here. But if you have one, you can do that. But the other thing you can do is you can just draw it in there. So I can go in here and kind of just draw it in where it needs to be. I can correct it now. I say, okay, it needs to be a little bigger. So just I draw it and I check it by flipping it down to make sure my drawing's good. Okay, that looks okay. I can kind of see a vein in there. I might draw that in there. And I can see the bottom of this more accurate. I wasn't so accurate the first time. I thought I was with the bottom of the lashes there, okay? Wasn't so accurate. So now I can see pretty clearly where to go here, like that. And don't bear down. And it can be a light drawing, okay? We're just going to draw it really lightly, okay? And then flipping this back down, I can kind of see, I see some highlights in here. I'll put those in there later, but I'm trying to look at where the boundary is. And this is where people mess up. You must check your work. When you make a dot, like a lash like this, flip it. And if it moves, you did it in the wrong place, okay? So I'm going to draw a lash in here like that. I want to make sure I'm in the right place. So going in here, drawing those lashes in here like that. You don't have to draw every lash, but I'm just trying to get the main ones in here. And if they move, you need to redraw or put it in a different place. So nothing should move once you do this, okay? When you flip it, things should stay in the same place. So I'm just going in here like this. I'm kind of using the after image of it when I flip it back and forth, okay? I'm trying to get the boundary. I just want to know where things live. You know, where's this? Where's that? It looks like also my my iris was too small. Again, look at this edge moving right. I don't know if you can see that or not. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more. Okay, see this edge right here. Now watch it when I lift it up. See how much it moves up to higher? It's higher. That's off. It's not quite accurate. So I'm going to have to move this edge over a little bit too. So it's just to show you that the stencil is not reliable. It gives us a rough idea where things are. Now, the other people say, well, why don't you just start with the flipping technique and draw? You can do that too. And usually I'll do that. I'll work without a stencil like that. But I'm just saying if you need a stencil, you can use a stencil like that to establish things. But the flip technique is going to be a lot more accurate. But in the interest of showing you different ways to do things, that's why I'm doing it like this. I'm showing you different ways to do the same thing. Okay. So I see this line here. I kind of see there's the tear duct area in here. Kind of working through here like this, trying to make that happen. See, I drew that in there. I kind of overrode that other one. So if something's in the wrong place, you want to override it and put the line and boundaries in the right place, okay? Because that makes a difference. You even draw the highlights there. You can kind of see, I kind of see that eyebrow needs to now come out here. I knew that eyebrow wasn't trustworthy I see kind of a boundary right here. And I kind of see the hair coming up here. I'm going to put a little bit of an indication of the hair coming up here. Now make sure when you flip it down, you're going all the way down with it. If you don't go all the way down with it, if you go like that, you're not really putting it in the right place. So kind of make sure you're going in the right place. And I'm just kind of putting things where they need to be, okay? I'm going to back the camera up a little bit. It feels like I'm getting out of focus there. And I'm looking at that bottom one, okay? And I'll do the same thing about now. You can go ahead with it. You don't have to stop watching me do all this because it's basically the same thing that I was doing before. So I'm just going in here and flipping it a few times to see if I can get in closer, a little bit closer, and just trying to find my boundaries. And take your time, try to do a good job. Okay. We'll let you guys continue. Go ahead and do this. Start drawing things in. Don't put a lot of pressure down with your pencil because it's not going to help anything. that hair is so off. I'm gonna have to make that hair half the size that I made it. It's such a bad job. I should have, that's one of the reasons I don't like to do the hairs on top. I like to come in and add this later, but it's a good way to show you what not to do sometimes. All right, coming across the top there. So I'm just checking my work. This is keeping everything in the right place. Now, the other thing about this paper is you can print the line art out on it. This paper you can actually run through a printer. It'll let you print really light. Now, you can't put a lot of ink on it because it won't take a lot of ink. But if you set it for really light, a very light version of your drawing, you can actually print on this paper and get your whole print out, all your line art done on the paper itself already. That's a big time saver. Okay. All right, so guys, I'm getting there. I'm gonna try to draw some of these lashes in there, although I don't know if I'll need them yet, but I'm gonna go ahead and draw them in there. Drawing the wrinkles, there's some wrinkles in there. Anything you see, any boundary you see is significant, like high contrast area, hard edges, you can draw them, you can indicate those. Okay, so the eyes are coming along. I've got a couple of adjustments I need to make, but they're getting there. My main concern or my main issue with these eyes that I'm doing is that I often think that I'm cutting a round shape out and it's not really round, or my iris is too small. So I'm seeing in this case, my iris was too small and in the wrong place, so I'm moving it. It was like I have some flat edges. It's really hard to cut a perfect circle with a blade. Not really easily done. So you may find yourself just drawing a whole new line for that. If you happen to have a circle template or a circle stencil, you can utilize that to help kind of make things work better. There we go. So there's I've kind of imposed the good lines on the bad lines there. I'll pause right there and let you guys catch up. And I'll start recording for a moment, let you guys kind of work on your drawing. So garbage in, garbage out, meaning that you start with a really blurry, out of focus, bad color reference, your end result is going to be compromised. So if you have a good printer, you can actually have a better outcome. There's some great printers out there, and the price is good too. I tell you where they get you. They get you on the ink. That, like, I guess everybody knows that. But I'm using the Sure Color by Epson right now. That's I've got a 17-inch wide printer. It's pretty expensive. It's probably about $1,000 or $1,200 for it, but it'll print a 17-inch wide, 8 colors, and so you get really nice reproductions. I try to also print on non-glossy paper. Why is that? Because if it's glossy, you really can't identify the color so well. So flatter, matte types of finishes are better for referencing color than having glossy proto prints made. Okay. All right, so kind of waiting for everybody to get caught up. So, okay, so let's say that I need a stencil for this eye and I don't have a circle stencil. So I'll try to find a coin that fits that. That quarter is pretty close. Okay, the quarter's a little too big, but it's pretty close. Maybe a nickel. Okay, so I'm looking for coins. I guess in Canada and Europe, you've got some different coins than we do, but looking for a larger coin. If you've got anything larger, and the reason I say this is because the coin kind of gives you a rough thing. Rough size. The other thing is maybe a bottom of a tool, such as a marker, the bottom of a marker. Sometimes you can use a bottom of some object here. Okay, I'm not seeing. For some reason, I think my screen is frozen there. There it is. Let's see if that works. Okay, the marker. See how that? I'm trying to find something that's close to the size of that roundness there. So some object found. Let's try a nickel. A nickel, actually, a nickel looks pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to take that nickel, and I'm going to go over, I'm going to trace it on a piece of paper. Okay, And I'm just going to go over here. Let's see right in here. Let's just trace it right on a piece of paper like that. Okay, so I'm going to go in here. And what I'm doing with this, I'm trying to get, I need a partial circle. I don't need a whole one, just a partial mask. And I'll use this as a shield. So I've got that. And I'm going to go off to the side. I'm going to do my best to cut that. Now, I know that my circle's probably going to suck. It's not, but if I can get just a fraction of it, a side of it that's nice and round, now I've got a pretty good chance of having a good outcome. So I'm going to go up here off the screen and see what kind of cutting skills I might have, which I know they're pretty bad. But that mat, let me see if I can use a cutting mat instead. So I'm going to take the cutting mat. I'm going to cut that the best I can. But my problem is my blade is broken. We're not doing so well. So I dropped my blade on the floor and ended up breaking the tip of it off. So hold on, let me pause that recording and see if I can find another blade. Okay, so here's what I've got, guys. I left it, but I didn't do a good job everywhere. As you can see, let me zoom in a little bit. It's rough in a couple of places, there and there, but hey, I've got a good cut right here. That's nice, and I can use that. So I didn't need it to be perfectly circular all the way around. I just need a couple of sections that were decent. And so what I can do is I can hold that over there, and it looks like, I can't see it there. It looks like it'll be a pretty good candidate, at least for that side of the eye. And that's the idea here, is to give me something I can use. And that's so that's the reason I made this. So if you guys want to take a moment, I'll just kind of leave that up on the screen. You can kind of see what I did. I used a coin to make my stencil, okay? Store-bought stencils are easy. If you have a store-bought stencil, yeah, wow, you can throw it down quick. But hey, we don't always have that handle, or maybe you don't have the right size. So a found object, something in your household, you can use the end of a magic marker. For me, it was a nickel. In the US, a nickel. I don't know in Canada what the equivalent would be. I don't know what the size of the coins are. I forget. It's probably been 20 years since I've been to Canada, Mississauga and Toronto, those areas. So I forgot what the coinage was like. And also somebody says there's a coin shortage going on right now. So, and also in Europe, I'm not familiar either with the coins going on there. And I used to be more familiar, but I've stopped traveling. And 2019 was my last tour of the world. So I've kind of gotten out of familiarity with the things. I'm certainly glad they unionized had a European Union for the sake of coining. You know, I was traveling to a different country every week, and I have to be concerned with lira and other types of francs. It depends on what country. And with the standardization of money there, at least I didn't have to worry about except when you went to the UK, they still used pounds as their standard. But as far as euros were great. You know, I still have some with me, but the coins are what we were looking for here. A coin that corresponds. It doesn't have to be a perfect match to that, but something pretty close. Actually, if it's a little smaller, it's easier because when you draw with a pencil, it's going to make it a little bigger. So, but we're only looking for a good section, a good maybe part, even a quarter or a third, or even a fifth of the curve. We just need a curve that allows us to start kind of helping establish a more round, a more accurate type of iris there. All right, I'll give you guys a moment to do that, and we're going to go on. Now, after class today, after the class is over today, you can continue to work. I'm going to try to leave on a note that gives you something to work on. So if you want to work on to the evening after class is over, you'll have a chance to do it. So yeah, I know. Oh, that's right. I forgot in Norway, you don't use the krone in Norway. I love Norway too. I don't know if you know, I was there a couple of years ago. And yeah, Norway's a beautiful country. Wow, it's an amazing place. I'd love to go back there someday and do a little more exploration of it. I think it was a lot of snow on the ground when I was there, but it was a beautiful place. And I forgot the town I was in. I've been there 3 or 4 times. I can't remember now, but it was really nice place. People were really nice too. Great students there. Really enthusiastic about art. That was what I liked about it. All right, so guys, take your time. I know that Bob had to go give his dog some food. So we got about 35 minutes before lunch break. So hang in there. I know you're probably getting a little hungry. So as soon as everybody's back, we'll go ahead. I think Bob's still taking care of his dog. So when he comes back, we'll push on. I think everybody will be ready by then. Okay, so guys, the first day we're just establishing things here. We're getting the eyes in there. The eyes are the most important part because that's the part that helps people. I mean, not that anything else is unimportant, but if we don't get the eyes right, it's not going to look good. So we're going to do our best to put our most energy into the eyes more than any other part of the painting. Okay. And you see I'm working sideways here, mainly because I want to, it's easier to flip it. And it's also better if you don't look at it right side up. If you look at it right side up, you're probably going to stylize it, okay? Meaning that you really don't want to know what you're drawing or painting because you want to look at it as just shapes and edges and values. If you know what you're drawing, let's say you know you're drawing an eye, you're probably going to stylize it or put some kind of bias in there that you may have subjectively thought about or been unconscious about actually since childhood. And that book that we were talking about, Betty, is it Betty Edwards? We were talking about, Des and I were talking about yesterday, that draws the book Drawing from the Right Side of the Brain. It talks about that. And that's why you see artists painting upside down because it helps you divorce yourself from knowing what you're painting. If you know what you're painting, you're probably going to stylize. So if you don't know what you're painting, you're going to be a little more accurate in your delivery of the final result. So think of it like you're reproducing somebody's abstract painting or abstract work. And that way you're not really looking at it as an eye. You're looking for boundaries and borders and values, edges, things like that. So the three things that we want to focus on are edges, shapes, and values. Okay, edges are the transitions, meaning there's a soft edge, a hard edge, a blurry edge or not. And shapes are the proportions, where everything is. It's in the right place or the wrong place. Where's that edge? Is it high or low or left or right? And then values are the darkness and lightness components of color. There's three components of color, and they are value, hue, and saturation, which we will talk about. Okay, and so we're doing mainly value is the most important one here. Okay, so you don't have to do all the lashes at this point. If you've got extra time, you can do them, but you can always come back and add them later, after the lunch break. So you don't have to do that now. I'm going to leave this attached. Okay, pretty much. I'm leaving everything attached to it. And I'll just flip it back out of the way when I'm ready to paint. So I can always put it back down and reaffirm some of these lashes. I drew a lot of the lashes in here. I didn't do any upper lashes. I think I didn't do those. I just kind of did some. I'm really thinking about the irises and pupils at the moment and the shape of the eyes. So I didn't put any detail into these. You can, if you want to, I'll come back and do those later. I'm really going to focus on getting these to become round mainly, getting those established because these eyes, as I said, are very important. And if this, you may not notice there's a missing lash, but hey, if there's a flat spot on the iris, yeah, that's pretty noticeable. So I'm trying to do the things that are important. The things that are important are the things that are noticed by myself and my spectator, the person who's going to be looking at my image. They're not going to be able to count the lashes, but if you've got an irregular shaped iris or you've got a corner down on the chin, yeah, that's a deal breaker for your painting. It'll really compromise it. So we try not to have that happen. Okay. All right. So everything's good. And let's see. And Bob, you got your dog fed and everything's good, right? Okay. Good. Excellent. All right. Happy dog. All right. So if is everybody ready? If anybody's not ready, wave to the camera if you're not ready. Okay. So nobody's not ready. Okay. So I've got the color here. Now I'm going to reshape this. I want to add some shape to it. So let's do that. Let's get this out of here. And I'm going to flip this back a little bit. I'm looking for I got a pretty nice curve right here. Okay. And I can see how I'm going to measure it. I can see it corresponds to it. Let's zoom in a little bit. I can see how it corresponds to the painting right there. Now, that's the bad spot. I want to use that. But right in there, it looks, I got a pretty good feeling about that. It's not perfect by any means, but hey, it's better than what I did the first time. Look at that. It's a terrible flat spot. So I'm going to go in here like this. And obviously mine was too small. And I'm just going to look at that, just try to find a spot for it. Maybe right about here. And I'm using a pencil to help me. Now, I got a magnet there, and that's going to help me too. I'm going to lay it in and look and check it and see, does it look like in the right place? No, it doesn't look like it. I need to rotate it down a little bit. Let's come down a little bit with it. Like that. Okay. And check it again. Okay. That looks way better. Okay. So let me double check a couple times. Maybe that's better. Okay. I see what's happening. I've only got one magnet on it, and that one magnet is allowing it to rotate around a little bit. And that's no bueno, right? I want to fix that. So let's put a piece of tape on it this time. Now let's check it. Okay, it looks acceptable. Acceptable laid on there. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now, just take the airbrush very simply and just go over, hold this down. I'm going to put my finger over that highlight. I want to protect that highlight. Let's zoom in a little bit more. And I really can't see it too well, can I? Maybe I can slide the whole thing down a little bit because to me, looks like you're not be able to see anything there at that range. So let's try to slide the whole thing down like this. I've got tape on it. That's the problem. So but this will help. Okay, there we go. All right, so happier now. Zoom in a little closer there. You can see. All right, so when I flip that back and forth and kind of see, I might be moving down a little bit. So I'm trying to be precise. You see me taking some pains to make this work because I want to be exactly on the money. Okay, flipping back and forth. Now I feel like it's a little bit too low. Okay, you see why I'm lifting up. Let's pick that up again and rotate a little bit this way. I'm going to stay with a pencil mark. I'm going to trust that pencil mark I made. Let's take it down. Let's check it. Okay, so that's a little better. Try to keep it held down. I think I can live with that. A little bit high, but I think let's just come down a little bit. So I keep saying I can live with it, and then I can't live with it. It's like a marriage, right? All right. Here we go. All right, so I'm gonna commit to that. Again, putting my fingernail right there over that because I want to keep that. Hopefully the arrow will pin everything down, and let's just round that off a little better. Like that. Okay, so how did that look? I don't know. How far up do I go? Well, I think that's adequate. So let's check it out and see what happens here. So just pick it up. I'm gonna leave it taped right there for position. And that's a little bit more round. Okay, now I can see the pencil part hanging out. And that makes me go, oh, did I have that wrong? Well, flipping it back and forth, I can see maybe I could come up toward the pencil a little more. The pencil maybe helped me a little bit more. So let me move it. So the good thing is, if you're getting something in the wrong spot, you can move. Now I can't see the edge anymore, but when I pick it up like that, I can see a white boundary. That makes me realize that I have indeed raised it a little bit. So I want to move it out a little bit like that. And you see, I'm being really picky about it. I'm very particular. Oh, don't forget, cover up that. Okay, and there we go. Okay, so that I feel better about that. My life is better. My despondency is leaving, and now I'm ready to go over here, take care of that. So let's go to this side. See, I think this side's a little bit different, but it looks like it corresponds fairly well to that curve right there. So let's lay it in there. Let's use that tape. That tape will help me. I trust the tape more at this point than I do the buckyballs because my buckyballs are high up and they don't let me lay my reference down all the way. When I lay that reference down on top of the painting to flip it, it actually acts as a block. It actually prevents me from seeing everything I want to see. So I get 2 pieces of tape. It's good for it is good for temporary positioning. So I'm looking at that, trying to see. It looks like I'm a little bit, I don't know, a little bit too low. Let's raise it up a little bit like that. Okay. See if that works. I'll put that on there for a second just to see, hold it there and see if that's working. Okay, that's a little better. Okay, that just feels a little better. So improve. Now I get to where every time I touch the painting, I want it to get a little bit better. But what about this? How high up am I go? Well, I think I can go pretty high, but I see that there's a line coming across there where the lid is, that fold is. It kind of disappears into nothing. So I'm not going to bother to demonstrate. I'm going to go ahead and let the paint flow onto it. Okay. And a little bit. Let's just go ahead and put some paint on it like this. And see a little bit. I'm flooding a little. I think I have a little water in my gun from when I cleaned it. That's why it's flooding. But as long as I'm staying in there, I should be okay. Let's see what I've got here. Well, let me make a mistake. I'm going to make a mistake. Oops. Let me show you how to deal with that. Okay, because that's probably instructive at this point. All right. So I'll take this off. And obviously, I've got some mistakes in there. I've got a line in there that doesn't belong, and all that. I've gone up into here, which it shouldn't have done. In that case, it's easy to fix. It's so easy, I'm actually embarrassed. So I'm going to fix that, I'm going to put a little bit of ammonia, sprayed it on the tip, on the front of my little, I'm going to call it a Q-tip, but not everybody has Q-tips. It's a cotton bud. And I'm just going to go here, and there's the dark spot right there, and I'm just going to get rid of it. Now, notice that I want you to see what happens when you do that. It takes away everything. So now I've got another edge up in here. Now, if this was a dark area, that would be a problem. But thankfully, I'm still in a light zone. It's all going to get darker. So I did kind of break through that. But that, again, not a problem. I have a line in here. See that line? I don't want that line. You probably can't see it. Let me see if I can lighten that up a little bit because it's a little bit. Let's see the lighten up. You can see it better now. Okay. I've got a line going through there. Okay. That's probably the original line for it. But in this reference, it's just a big dark shape, isn't it? I can't even see it. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of it by going ahead and just kind of put the brown over that like this. Because I'm trying to make it ambiguous. Why? Remember I said that if it's ambiguous in your reference photo, make it ambiguous in your painting. So an area, if you lose sight of this edge, it just disappears completely. That's what you want to do in your painting too. Oops, okay, there's another mistake for you. Now what happened there? Well, I sprayed the paint on there and I dipped the reference into it. Now, let me tell you before I tell you how to do it, let me tell you how to prevent it. sometimes I'll prevent it by putting a little magnet up there like that. Okay, that magnet will keep it from touching all the way, and it'll keep it from dipping into it. If this happens to you, don't panic. Okay, don't freak out. Just relax and first let it dry. And what happened was the paint was wet, and I dipped down into it, and it obviously did. Now I'm touching with my finger to make sure it's pretty dry, and then I can just go back over it again with the paint like that. So it's an easy fix. Don't panic. Oops, I'm still a little bit wet there. Let's dry a little bit. Okay, and come down now. I gotta be careful here because I got an edge. And I see my pencil drawing came over here. You see that? My pencil drawing comes over here, and my circle went the other way. Which one is right? They both can't be right. Well, obviously my pencil drawing was right. Okay, so I'm gonna take my pencil drawing and I'm gonna move this mass. See, it was round, but it's not. Shows that this is not a perfectly round shape. I'm gonna drop this down to about where the pencil line is right there, and I'm just gonna go over. I'm gonna bring it over a little bit more. I don't have to go super dark here, by the way. That might be darker. Let's see if I can get to the bottom of this too. Yeah. All right, make that a little more round. I feel there's a flat spot down. You see that flat spot? I don't like that. Let me look at it. Oh, okay, I still got room. I need to make it more round. So I look for the more round spot on my image there, and I just say, there it is. Let's just make it more round. I'm gonna round it out. There we go, like that. I'm getting some water and stuff, which means that I have water. I'm running out of paint. I had some water in there, and the water is now coming out more than the paint. That's why things are getting a little bit kind of weird with the paint here as I run out of it. Okay, I'm flipping it back and forth and looking at it. It's okay, it's not perfect, but you know what? It's a lot better than it was, and that's what I'm looking for. Again, and if you want to push a little further into here like this, kind of move it up into this area, you can do that. You know, also, I'm going to try to turn the corner here and maybe make a little bit of an edge right here. Okay, you kind of see there's an edge right there. Now I'll make this ambiguous. Let's just kind of fill that in so there's no edge there. Like that. Okay. Now I'm close. I'm a 1/4 inch away or less than a centimeter away, guys. Really close to it here because I don't want overspray to get up into here. I'm trying to keep everything contained. So when I freehand, I'm really close. I'm this far away from it. Okay, I'm really close to it. So don't get back here far away. This is the time to lean in, not back. All right, so I'm going to stop right there and let you guys catch up to where I'm at. Okay, I'll stop and give you guys a few minutes to catch up, and then we'll continue on from there. Okay, I'll pause the recording. If you have questions, just send me a message here, text, or you can turn unmute your microphone and talk that way. Either way is fine. So I've got the torn piece of paper on there, and I'm going to use that torn piece of paper to create an organic edge there. I'm just going to go in there like that. Or you could find that same spot on the stencil, the Skin 5 stencil, the stencil you got should have an organic edge on it like that. Okay. The other thing other stencils I made are because sometimes they're hard to achieve. Like I've got a French curve of this organic edge because it's hard to make this with a French curve with paper. It's hard to control the tear or make smooth sweeping edges with organic edges with paper. So we made one. That's why we have these French curves I have. They have this very slight, actually I used a paper texture edge for it to have the option to lay that in. So you see now I've got a rough edge right there, a little more realistic than if it was smooth. Some things are going to be smooth like the top and over here, but there's certain edges that call for organic or rougher edge than what is indicated by or created by some of these other smooth types of stencils. Okay, so are we guys about, does anybody need more time? If you need more time, wave to me. If you need more time. Okay, anybody need more time? You guys good? Larry, you okay? You good? All right. So Larry, you're not far from, you're probably, I'm down in Charleston, so you're in the next state. So, next time you come down to Charleston, I expect a visit, right? If you ever come down this area. I'm also in Blair.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, because I think I'm maybe 3.5 from Charleston.
Yeah, okay. Now, do you have family up there?
Well, yeah, this is where I'm originally from.
Okay, so I got you.
I moved away for a while, then I moved back here. So
I got you. Yeah, I used to live in Raleigh. I lived actually up on North Raleigh, and then I moved up to Wake Forest area up there above Raleigh. That's where I started the school in '97 in Raleigh.
Oh yeah. Because I remember you remember Crabtree Mall?
Yeah. I used to paint T-shirts there. Oh yeah. My God, that's showing my age. This is. What year was that? I don't even remember. Was that in the 90s?
This was sometime in the 90s.
Yeah, early 90s. It had to be early 90s because I remember I moved to Raleigh. I came in 80, I think it was 89. Okay. I had a date. I remember going on a date and we saw Working Girl.
Okay.
And that was, that movie had just come out. So that kind of gives you the idea of when I was there.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah.
Like, but I went anyway, you know, being a guy.
Yeah. I was just in school. I had graduated high school, and I was at ECU, and I would come there, and like I said, Jose was kind of showing me a few things, and sometimes you would come in, and yeah. So that's when I first met you.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't seen Jose in many years. I heard that he was in Cancun painting, but I haven't seen him. We used to hang out together all the time, and about 20 years ago, we were both in the Mustangs. We had both had old Mustangs. I still have mine.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, he was all into it, and I don't know. I mean, I've lost touch. I touched him, but I'm sad that I've lost touch with him because you know he went out of the country and stuff, and
Right.
you know I just never knew what became of him. He's not on
Yeah.
social
Yeah.
media. I can't find him on social media, so
Yeah.
I've lost touch.
Yeah.
But maybe I'll reconnect one of these days here with
Yeah,
him.
but I definitely will visit you when I come down. I'm
Yeah,
on
do
that
that. Do
area.
that. Bring the family down because Charleston's an amazing place for
Oh yeah.
family stuff. It's really good. You know, just you can walk around. It's the closest thing I think. I think it's the closest city we have to a European city. It's very
Oh, wow.
walkable. You know, everything you can walk everywhere. It's very safe down in the downtown Charleston area. It's the little shops and malls, cobblestone streets still. But the best part for I think is it has I think 43 galleries, art galleries, and so
Wow.
it's eye candy, all different styles. You know, you walk in and you see all these amazing, amazing artwork and very inspiring. You know, if you
Wow.
guys ever also think about wanting to go toward the fine art route, you know, this is what happens. Sylvia came down here and she's from Italy and she came down here and met with a couple of gallery owners and they took her work in. So, you know, you never know what could happen.
Okay. Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. That's one city I've never been to. I've been to a lot of places around South Carolina, but I hadn't been to Charleston. So.
Yeah, you would love it down here. It's really very nice. Yeah, come down, look us up, come by. I'll give you a little tour of the school. It's not a big school down here. It's I bought this school because I wanted to do a workshop in Charleston. So I came down here looking to rent a room, basically, because I thought, well, Charleston might be a fun destination place. And maybe people want to come down here instead of to Blair, South Carolina, because Blair is great, but it's out in the middle of nowhere. So maybe a destination place. So while I was talking to the owner of it, she casually mentioned, okay, well, I'm thinking about selling this place in 3 years. So I said, hey, if you ever sell it, let me know. I'd be interested in buying it. So, but by the end of the conversation, which lasted about an hour, it went from 3 years to 2 years to 1 year to 6 months to, by the time I left there, I'd written her a check and was on the way out the door. So I bought the business turnkey. It was an already operating school here, but it was bigger than I thought it was. It has 1,900 students. It had 12 instructors while I was here. I moved it to 17 instructors, but it has 1,900 students. I mean, that's like 5 times bigger, 4 times bigger than my current school. And then I've got all these people. So administration, yeah, I learned all about that. And
I bet you did.
yeah, you got payroll, administration. It's been big, but Sylvia's here helping me. She's been wonderful at doing the management part. But that's the reason the woman who wanted to sell it. She was had done very well. Okay, so we're in the other eye now, for the sake of the recording. I'm going this other eye now. Position on here. It feels pretty good at the bottom, but the side is not right. So I'm going to go ahead and get the bottom of it. Let's go ahead and add some there. All right, I need to lower that bottom. Okay, it needs to be lower. My edge is too high at the bottom. I can see that. So, but it seemed okay at the bottom of it. It seemed like that was a nice curve. Let's go ahead and add a little more to it. Oops, I'm flooding it again. That makes me realize, hey, I've got an issue with the paint running out or something like that. So let's go ahead and get rid of the paint. Let's check this out and see what I've got going on here. Okay, so you can see my paint's so thin. It's thin because I had water in it and I didn't clean it out completely. So now it's out. I'll put one more drop in there. That's one of the best things about this airbrush. The side cut is so frugal with paint. It doesn't take much to prime it. Okay, so I love the side cut. That's one of the many reasons I use the side cut. So now I'm looking for another side here. I'm going to move this down to the pencil line. Let's check it out. Oh, okay. I don't even know if that's wide. That looks better, but I still think it's going to have to go wider. It feels like this edge might be too low. So I'm going to rotate a little bit. Let's see if I can check it out. Let's move it up a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and spray it. Let's just see what we get. Okay. Worst thing that happened, well, you can learn something. All right. So I'm going to spray in there. All right. Let's let it dry a moment and hit it again. Okay. That looks pretty good. Let's see how that looks or how that works. Okay. All right, so let's check it. Lay it down in there. Oh, it's still wet. See it picking up the paint? Okay, that's gotta be careful there, but I'm not really panicked about that. I think it looks pretty good. I'm just gonna extend this on out a little bit. Let's take a fresh side. That's a flat side. I don't want that flat side. Let's just push this one up in here like that. Okay, and let's dry it a little bit more and just add some more paint. I mean, I kind of started trying to draw in that highlight right there, okay? I don't think that's really the best way to do it, but I tell you what I could do. It looks like there's a hard edge right, so I'm gonna lay this in here like this. Everything below that's dark, okay? How do I, well, look at the reference, see everything below that line is dark. If I'm in the right spot, which I'm not, I need to move that up a little bit, don't I? So let's rotate, move it up a little bit. There we go, okay. That's a little better. Okay, that feels better to me. Now, all this is too light right here. You see all that's too light. And I also notice that look how wide and out of place my hair is, okay? So I drew another line where I think that hair needs to go. And I'm gonna move this line over a little bit. So this is me making an adjustment on it here like this. I'm gonna move that over. And this needs to go darker underneath it. So let's just make it darker like that. Okay. Now, what about this area that we just did? Okay, what about this area here? Let's get this darker. And then make that nice and dark. And that's gonna go darker too. Okay, what about all this in here? Now, one of the things that would help you about that is that you have that dowel. And the dowel may or may not work at this point. Why not? Well, because the problem with the paint is, this paint is very inconsistent, meaning that sometimes the paint allows you to scratch and sometimes it doesn't. So let's just try it. I mean, the worst thing that happened, we'll learn something. Let's just see if it's going to scratch. So I'm going to try to make a scratch in here. Let's just kind of put a little scratch right about there. It's not working too good. Okay, you see, I'm just really smearing around. I'm trying to make a mark in it, but it's not really removing it. Okay, so I'm trying over here. Maybe a little better there. I think maybe the paint's a little drier there or something. But what this allows me to do is go in there and start making some little lines in here, kind of like the reference. Okay. Now, if you want more precision than this, you have your other friend. Okay, where's my other friend? Do I have another friend in the area? Let me see if I have another friend. There he is, the blade, okay? The blade allows you a little more precision. Now, remember, you gotta lay that blade way down to make that work. So I'm gonna see if I can get that blade to work right here. Let's just go ahead and make a mark here like that. So you see it's much more precise. Now, I'm in the right place. Nah, not too bad, but it's not too great. Let me see, I need to add a little more to the top here. All right. Now, I'm going to hold this way down here. See, let's back up the camera. I want you to see how awkward this is. I'm holding my blade like this. Why? Because I need that blade, that's too light. I need that blade to be laid down so that it's parallel to the surface because I don't want to dig a hole in it. So I'm laying it way down. I'm holding it like this just to make sure that blade is not pointing down like that. I have to lay it on its side. It's very uncomfortable. Hence the reason I like the dowel so much. Okay, so I'm going to get in there and try to scratch out. It's hard to make a scratch. I really need more background in here to do that, but at least I can get it started. I can also mark this at least. Let's say a mark right there. Just kind of say, okay, there's something that's going to be there like that. Okay, kind of give me an idea. Let's zoom back in to see so you can see it. Okay, so let's just take the mask off and see what we've got. I don't want to spend any more time because it's time for lunch. So I'll stop right there. Okay, and you guys want to do that and go eat, or you can, do that when you come back. Either way, you probably do it now. I think probably better while it's fresh in your mind. I'll stop the record. Okay, I'm recording again here. So one of the things about the colors is that you buy sepia or brown or one of these other colors that has a name on it, and the next bottle may not be the same color. I've noticed that there's a big problem with color control with a lot of the companies, even Createx, whereas their burnt umber is all over the map. So it may turn out that the burnt umber you're spraying in your lot may be not a good match for the reference. You have to just kind of look and see. My airbrush is a little bit dirty. It has some blue in it, so my burnt umber is not going to be so pure. It's not. If your burnt umber is too orange, you may want to consider that you may have to adjust it. But fortunately, we're in a kind of a preliminary stage, so you don't have to worry too much about it. But as long as it's a dark brown color, you see the burnt umber works pretty well here. Okay, but I think I can probably get away with it. Yours may not be the same. Now, looking at this, I realize I'm not dark enough in that spot. You can see there's a spot needs to go. I'm going to lighten up a little bit so you can see a little better. I'm going to over lighten it. Let's just get it really light here. I want you to see kind of into it. You can see how that's still a highlight in there, and it needs to be darker. In reality, it's dark in the center going out. So I'm going to go back in and make some adjustments here with it. I'm going to take my airbrush, and I'm just going to start pushing it darker in here. Okay, I'm going to get it. So I'm going to do the first. I'm going to do the cube. I'm going to bring the camera a little bit closer so you guys can see it there. There we go. Let's see if I can get a little better focus too. That focus doesn't look too good. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to get in there, and I'm just going to go ahead and start spraying a little bit in here like this. So you can get in here freehand here, and ignore the highlights. Ignore those those highlights in there, they're not really relevant yet. So I'm freehanding it. I notice that this comes down a little further like that. I'm going to freehand a couple of lights and little dagger strokes in there just to kind of spread it out a little bit. There we go. So now we're trying to make it look a little more like it corresponds to the red screen. I'm also going to bring some over in here, just darken that down. Again, ignore the highlight. We'll bring that back in a moment. I'm just really looking to make sure my values are dark enough. Now, a little splatter right now. This one, you know when I told you that when I make a mistake like that, I have that 5 choices. Well, this is choice number 3. I'm going to leave it. Why? Because that actually doesn't hurt anything. That kind of is, first of all, it's going to be in the shadow, but there's little bits and pieces and stray marks and splatters. They're actually not going to hurt us so bad. So if you want to, you could actually go ahead and freehand this too, or you can use a shield to get that edge. I'll probably use a shield or a mask to do that because it's a little bit, well, it's not really a super hard edge, but I'm concerned that I won't be able to get as nice an edge as I need here. So I'm kind of go back and forth here. A few splatters in there. Okay, there, again, that doesn't matter. That actually adds to it. So my main thing though is to get back into this area and deal with this area. This is super, super dark up here. I mean, really black almost. You can almost use black on it, but it shows that a transparent color has the capacity to get super, super dark. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm not going to try to paint around these. I'm just going to go ahead and blast away at these like this because there's no use trying to paint around them because it's not possible to really get a good color or a good edge there. So I'm going to go ahead and freehand this too. Now, if you're concerned about your quality, again, you can use a mask here. If you're worried about maybe if you're new to the airbrush and you don't feel like confident in getting these lines in there, you can freehand it. That's no problem. No shame in that. Or you can mask them. There's no shame in using a mask. Yeah. I'm also going to get up in here and do a little more work in here. Now, notice a problem in here. And let's go ahead and address this. Otherwise, it becomes the 800-pound gorilla in the room. There is a shape. My shape is wrong right here. You can kind of see how that shape goes off that way. It really needs to go the other way. Well, in this case, I have the option. I'm going to try to use this eraser. I'm not trying to limit it. I'm going to try to reduce its presence. So let's go here like this and try to round it off a little bit like that. Okay, and that helps a little bit. Okay, you can kind of see, I see some blue transferring on that. And let's kind of see if we can shave that edge off too. You see it kind of gives a little bit of a ragged edge there. Okay, now to make up for that ragged edge, I can always come back and put let's see, did I remember to record this? Yeah, okay. I always come back and put that circled stencil on there to kind of round up so I can get some continuity going through that edge. So I'm just going to do that. See if I can make that happen. Pop in there like that. It kind of overrides the edge there, but now it's a much smoother transition coming through there than I had in the past. Okay, and that's what I'm looking for, is a nice smooth transition. I'd say I need a little bit more security on this. Let's make that sure that tape's holding. Okay, so now I'm looking at it again. I'm looking, and I'm trying to see what happens up in here. And I'm going to try to narrow this down a little bit. Now you see this out of focus is actually enhanced by the fact that we're freehanding around it like this, and we got a double edge. But I'm just going to kind of go up in there. Now I actually went a little too high right in there, not a problem. I'm just going to push over. Now, what I'm trying to do at this point, I'm trying to bury that white. When I say bury the white is the enemy of your perception, meaning that the white around this makes everything look darker by contrast. So it's not always a good thing to have white around. I go to great lengths to try to bury the white quickly. I got a speck like that, not a huge deal. I can try the dull. Let's try the dull and see if it removes it. The dull does a pretty good job of it. You can see it cleans it up pretty nicely. You can always also use the dull to kind of bring things back through here like this if you want to. But the problem with that, it leaves a pretty hard edge, and I need a blurry edge. So I might be better served to take the soft eraser and go through it like that. With the soft eraser, give me a little bit more of a blurry edge like that. So I'm trying to restore that edge, or that light line right there. I don't want as wide as what I had before, but I want it to be rough and a little bit blurry. So using this to help me kind of get it, at least it moved in the direction where it was. Okay, so I still need to blur it. I'll blur it a little more later. I might have to blur it with some paint. I don't know if I can effectively get it to blur with this tool, but we'll see if we can widen it up a little bit, like that. Okay, so that's kind of getting there. Now comes the point where I want to go at and go after these highlights. So I'm gonna take the blade. I kind of see where I was before. I can take the blade and bring that highlight back, restore that. Oh, let me try the dowel. I think the dowel is probably a good camera. But that dowel looks kind of blunt. See, it's just what's really not well done. So do I have another dowel in here that's actually sharp? No, I don't. So I'm gonna take the blade. I'm gonna try to sharpen it real quick. See if I can get a little bit more of a point there. I could put this in a pencil sharpener, but the pencil sharpener's in the other room, and I am too lazy to get up and go get it apparently. All right, that's a pretty good point right there. Let's see what I got. So I don't know if I can scratch up with this, but I'm gonna flip it up and down a couple times. See what we're gonna have now. it may not be strong enough to remove this paint, especially if the paint gets kind of thick. The dial becomes very ineffective at it, but it's okay. Now I'm getting in here. Now I'm going to also make another one next to it. I'm going to come real close to that line, and you see I leave a little bit of paint behind like that. It makes a little fine line in there. So I'm just checking my work with the flip technique to see that I'm putting things in the right place like that. Okay, coming down here, and this I'm trying to be as precise as possible at this point. I know there's some color in here, a little bit of blue. I'm not worried about that. I'm just thinking about the shapes right now. I can always put some blue tint in there later if I want to add that, and that's really just a, let's say, a reflection of that whatever's around or outdoors or who knows. Looks like she's in the woods or something. Hard to say, but anyway, I'm just going to head and clean that up a little bit. Now, there's another little triangle right here, and these are easy. I mean, the other thing is that you don't have to be so super precise with these like you might think, because nobody's measuring these. As long as they approximate the reference material, that's fine. But I do try to be as close as I can. So that's why I'm using the flip method to check my work and taking my time and trying to do a good job, trying to be careful with it at this point. Okay, now sometimes you're going to find out the dial just simply doesn't work. That's a case like you might try to get something out and you can't. So in that case, you can take the dial and you can twirl it like that, and that'll pull paint off, okay, by spinning it. Now this is a little bit more complicated in here. There's finer, smaller shapes and things like that. So I'm going to get in there and really be really precise with it. I don't know if I can scratch fine enough. I can't without. So that leaves me with my little friend, the blade. So the blade is a little more precise. I can get in there and make a line like that. There are little small little features in here, like really small. This is kind of the area between the trees that we're looking at in the reflection. Like that, and I think there's something here too. So I'm making some little lines in there like that. Here we go. So kind of roughing it in a little bit. It's not perfect. I apologize for that. But we're trying to give a pretty good approximation of it. But again, my eyes are not what they used to be 5 years ago. So it's kind of a struggle for me to be so precise. I can't see hardly at all. The past 5 years of my paintings have been not quite so good because of this cataracts coming on. It's a hereditary thing, but I will eventually get some surgery to restore that. But for now, I have to live with it. But we'll do the best we can. When you get my age, you start running into these things. See, I missed that. I started scratching. And I missed that line, okay? But while I've got this blade in my hand, I'll fix this over here. Kind of bring that back up and scratch that out like that. And what do I do about the extra scratch? Now, how do I deal with that? Okay, I got an extra scratch right here. Now, let me go ahead and make another scratch. Let's go oops like that. Okay, I got this scratch. Got a problem. So I got two bad scratches in here. How do I fix that? Well, easily. I'll take this mask right here, and I'll cover the good one up and spray and cover up the bad one. Get the bad one. That one's gone. Same with this bottom thing. If I want a straight edge right here, I just hold it like that. Hold it down a little better than that. And just kind of spray in there and clean up that edge like that. Okay, so yeah, it's very easy. And I'll go back and check a little bit. Now, I know there's some scratches and I'll say scratches, highlights in here, but I can't put those in yet. Why not? Well, obviously, I don't have any background in there yet, okay? If I have background in here, I could scratch that, but it's no use to even try to scratch it now with no background. I do see some tiny little dots I missed. Maybe in here, some little tiny dots. Let's see if I can get those in there. Like that. Just a couple little dots in there like this. And kind of working. I'm trying to adjust to see a couple of marks like that. And maybe let's wipe that a little bit wider right there. Okay, that's kind of geometric in shape. So let's kind of make a corner right there. Okay, so that looks okay. We can obviously do the same. We'll do the same thing. The other eye only has like a couple of dots to do. So if you want to do the other eye afterwards, I'll show you the eye in a moment. I'll go ahead and leave this on the screen. And now I want you guys to go ahead and tackle that, okay? And do the best you can. I'm gonna come back and clean it up a little bit. I see a couple of places here I just kind of missed. Let me see if I can help that. I think what happened is my paint was wet and I smeared it just now when I wiped it off. So I'll go back. But you guys can go ahead and start if you want to. I'll go ahead and try to clean up my act a little bit here. Make it look a little better. There we go. Try to get rid of some of this extra stuff. Okay. There we go. Somebody's got a little compressor in there. I hear it. All right. I think that's not so bad. I mean, it could be better, but could be worse. The good thing about that blade, it's so precise. You can get in there really nicely. And this one thing that separates this paper out from the illustration board and some of the other things that is out there is that it does tolerate the blade very, very well. Okay, whereas most things are not going to accept the blade at all. They just pretty much fall apart, unfortunately. Okay. Yeah, Marcel, the echo that was going on was because somebody else has their mic on, but you guys are good now, right? All right. So guys, I'll give you guys a few minutes and then we will advance the project a little further. Okay, you guys are doing a great job. Some people sent me some pictures. Everybody's on track. I would say the only thing I can warn you about is just avoid going too dark in certain places, okay? But other than that, so far from what I've seen, you guys are doing real well. I do have some artifacts, some smudges outside that, and I'll address those in a moment, but for the most part, I don't really I'm not too concerned about them because we know that we have our friends and our little friends can help us clean up everything. All right, so we'll just deal with that in the next step or so. But take your time, guys. Let's take a few minutes. I'm actually, while you guys are doing that, I'm actually going to move to the other room. I wonder if I could freeze this image. I don't know if I can freeze it or not. Well, you can use it. I was going to tell you I'm going to move to another room because I've just realized that this studio is going to be used by a bunch of children in about, I don't know, 40 minutes. So I'm having to kick myself out of this room and go to the big studio room in there, which is fine. The light is actually better in there anyway. So it could take me a few minutes to move it. So you may see some strange motion going on here as I move the computer and everything over to the other room. I'm going to disconnect the camera and well, I might be able to get away with that. Anyway, so if things start bumping around or jumping around, you'll know what's going on, okay, as we move to the other room. All right. Yeah, and guys, if you don't see me recording, turn your mic on and say something because when I'm painting, I'm not seeing the screen, and obviously I missed your messages that say, hey, record. So just turn your mic on and say, hey, Drew, please remember to record. I don't be shy about that because I need sometimes some prompting like that. So let me review what I did. You can keep on painting. What I did, I went to this other eye and I basically went in and scratched in here. And I had trouble scratching everywhere. And I'll go ahead and I kind of lost a couple of places there. But I also realized I needed to do more work on the pupil. So I took a pupil, painted that one too, and went up through here. And I started going through here. And I pulled an overspray here. And we got to over here with the overspray. I came with the blade and scratched out these lines in here. I scratched all the way into here, all the way into the interior of it. Then I came back with the paint and I pushed that paint back on there. Now, when I started working here, I covered up a couple of lines. For instance, I covered up this highlight right here. So I'm just going to go back and restore it like that. Highlight right there. And the other ones seem okay. I don't really think I have to do anything with that. I also did some work up in here. I wasn't happy with it, so I used the eraser to soften up. The eraser gave me a rough edge, but when I came back over with some paint, that rough edge, while it's still there, it's not so noticeable, not so apparent, and I'm just going to leave it. I'm not really worried about it because it's so subtle, and the organic quality of this edge actually, I think, to my mind, enhances the image. Okay, and number three, I'm pretty lazy about going back and fixing things. So if I can get away with it, I'll leave it. All right. So I'll stop the recording and let you guys continue what you were working on and carry on. So the whites of the eyes are not white because they have shadows on them, they have reflections on them, and other things that cause them to appear not pure white when you paint them. Now, what closest to pure white you'll get in any portrait is probably going to be in the specular highlights. So in this case, the specular highlight's not pure white, but you can see how white it is on the other eye, where there's a highlight on the eye and on the white of the eye. And when there's a highlight on the white of the eye, you can really appreciate how much darkness is in the white of the eye itself. So it's hard to match the color for the white of the eyes too. So usually I will buffer those. I will use a buffered color, and I will attempt to match that color on the white of the eye because it's so hard to match that color on the surface by the seat of your pants, so to speak. So because the harder colors are the harder colors that exist, I usually will match them with buffered colors. The easy colors that don't require such precision would be something like the shadows or the hair, mainly because shadows, the way we perceive, I should probably talk about this, the way we perceive, we don't perceive colors and shadows very well. Okay, why not? Well, because we have cones and we have receptors in our eyes called cones and rods. The cones perceive the color component of light, where the rods are more assigned to values, darks and lights. So You notice that when it's darker in a room, or dark rooms, you can't really see the colors of anything on the wall. Everything kind of becomes gray. At night, same thing. You don't see strong colors. Even though the colors might be strong in the daylight, they're really dull and almost gray in the night or in the late evening, you know, when there's very little light. That's because your cones need a minimum amount of energy to function. If they don't have enough light energy hitting them, then they will indeed not fire correctly and not give us any information about the color. Well, shadows are the same way. When light hits this, say this dark area right here, most of the light is absorbed and very little light is bounced off into our eye. And because our cones don't have enough light hitting them from this part of the painting, they cannot perceive that color very well. So, but as a consequence of that, it's not necessary to worry about the color's accuracy in the shadows or darker colors. I've abandoned doing that. Why not? Because nobody can see those colors anyway. Nobody can tell whether it's a greenish brown, a purplish brown, or reddish brown if it's sufficiently dark enough. So I quit matching colors to dark shadows. So, and if you ever do match a color to dark shadow, which you may come across that, you may want to do that sometime, you notice it's extremely difficult because our eyes aren't sensitive to shadow and dark colors. We can't see them. And we can't see them, it's really hard to match them. It's like trying to match a color in the dark. Well, the same principle, you're trying to match a dark color. Your cones don't have enough light energy or photons hitting them from that dark area surface to make a judgment or an evaluation of the color. And therefore we don't see the color very accurately. So because of that, I stopped worrying about it. And that has sped my paintings up a good bit. The only colors I really worry about, or not worry about, the only colors I aim for are the highlighted colors or the exposed colors that are otherwise hard to match. For instance, like I said, the white of the eye is hard to match. It's a hard color to match, okay? Now you see how much I've overlighted this thing. My hand looks pretty white in here. I've overlighted because I want you to see, but in reality, this color is, let's get the color back to a normal color here. There we go, getting it back to normal, okay? These eyes are, the white of the eye is pretty darn dark. You see that it's not very light. You can see in your own reference material, it's not very, even the highlight's not very light. So, you know, when remember I talked about people exaggerate contrast and people are too contrasty, meaning their lights are too light and their darks are dark. That's what you want to pay attention to. If this is not a pure white color in your reference material, don't make it a pure white color in your painting, okay? It's not necessary, okay? So I recorded that so you hopefully it will be worth listening to later. I'll go ahead and stop recording, give you guys a few more minutes, and then we'll advance the project, okay? Let me stop the recording. There we go. Because when you stare at something for so long, it's easy to lose sight of it. In other words, you look at something for so long, you really can't see it objectively anymore. You start focusing on things that are probably not relevant. A lot of artists focus only on the mistakes and they miss everything else. But what I usually do to combat that is I'll take a photo of my work and I will look at it on my phone. And when I look at my phone, I've changed the context under which I'm viewing it. And it often reveals mistakes or deficiencies in my image that I can go ahead and address. The other thing I do is I look at it, I've got a computer monitor here, obviously, that I'm broadcasting. I'll look over at that and I say, well, how does this look on the computer monitor? And sometimes it reveals things to you that you didn't see before. So changing the context of the image helps. Now, the other option is to, you know, when you've seen this happen before, you come back to a painting you've worked on at night, you come back in the morning and you notice things that you didn't see before. The same thing happens. You coming back with a fresh eye, so to speak, no pun intended here. So you come in with a fresh eye and you notice things that were not obvious before. And that's the advantage. Now, the old masters, what they would do to change the context, they would just look at their work in a mirror. And when they looked in a mirror, they saw things and those things, hey, that weren't maybe in proportion or things like that. So the idea is to change the context, take it and look at your phone, be critical of your work, be really rough on yourself, not the point where you suffer for it, but have a high standard, set some high goals in there, make your goals noble and ambitious. Because if you shoot for the moon and only make it halfway to the moon, you've still gone pretty far. So, don't be afraid of setting high goals for yourself. Just don't make your happiness attached to it, So, all right, so I'll give you guys a few more and then we'll go on. I think we're just about wrapped up. If you need more time, though, I'm happy to give it. I'm going to go ahead and right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to maybe see what I can do about some structure of the eye around that. We'll start moving to that in just a moment, okay? I'm trying to remember that. Now, what are we going to do now? Okay, so now I'm looking at this and so while we're on this side, let me go ahead and address this while we're looking at this eye. And I'm thinking to myself, I've got some structure in here I'd like to at least acknowledge the structure. I've got some, but it's not really dark. It's not really that brown color. It's more of a kind of reddish color, but there are some structure around. So because it's reddish means I can't really, I can't use this as a color, but I can use it for structure. And what I mean by that, well, I can go in here and I'm just going to freehand this. And I'm going to show you how to work without a mask here. I'm going to freehand this in here like this. Just kind of put a little color in there like this. Maybe a little bit in here like this too. Just put a little color in there, probably a little more than, trying to be light with it, okay? And what I'm doing right now is I'm establishing structure. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to put some background color in there and put a little background color in here like this, kind of going all around here like that, okay? And the reason I'm doing this is because I need some structure in it, meaning I need to know where the boundaries of these features are. Now, I kind of roughed in there. It looks pretty rough. I know it's rough. It doesn't look very clean. It doesn't look very neat. It doesn't look like, it doesn't even look professional. But because I've got tools, little friends right here, I can start fixing that. So first thing, if that edge is too soft, I'm going to take this dial and go in here and kind of clean up a little bit. All right, I can do the same thing here. Now the dial's not working too well. Let's try the blade. Now the blade's a little bit more brutal, but it's precise. So I'm going to go in here and let's bring this back like this. Kind of laying that blade way down. Okay, again, the reason I don't like to hold the blade because it requires such a precise or specific type of hand position that it's not always pleasurable to use. Okay, if I could hold it like a pencil, that would be ideal, but that doesn't give me that option. Okay, I'm going here and trying to see how it kind of fades out. It fades out because the background fades out. Okay, now this edge right here, I'm going to restore that edge. I kind of lost that edge. Let's restore it, bring it back here. Okay, now I also see some highlights in here. Let's go ahead and bring a highlight through there. And there's a highlight here. That's a soft highlight though. You notice this highlight right in here is soft. So I'm going to try the eraser right there because this is going to be a soft. So I'm going to take the eraser right there and make a soft kind of circle shape. I'm kind of lift, I erase a little bit and then lift up, erase and lift up. Now I'm just going to make it bigger. It looks like it's nice and soft. That's what I want. Soft, soft, soft. So different tools give us different edges. That's looking better. It's not perfect, but it's looking better. Okay, and I feel pretty good about that. There's a kind of a lighter area in here. I'm too dark, so I'm going to come in there with the eraser and lighten that up a little bit too. So let's just kind of lighten that up a little bit. You see what it's giving me, the result it's giving me, okay? And what else? What else? I see things are, that's okay right there. Maybe kind of come in here like this. So the eraser's not as precise, but it gives you a little bit softer. It's kind of like between the blade and the airbrush and what it delivers, okay? Which is good. I see a dark speck there. I don't like that. Let's get rid of that dark speck. Okay, it won't come off. It doesn't come off. Escalate to the blade. The blade pretty much destroys everything or cuts through anything. There we go, like that. So that's more like it. Okay. Now you might just want to also manage your shavings. You've got shavings from eraser from whatever there. Now you see I kind of left it kind of loose in here. If I needed something hard, if I need a hard edge in here, I can take the blade or the dowel, if I had the dowel in my hand, and kind of come in and work some areas through there like that. Okay. I can pull some highlights out like this. And you know, I kind of, but I see pretty much it looks, I've got some ambiguous areas in the reference. See how you don't really see that line in the reference material? I want to make sure I'm doing the same thing here. I can see the line pick up here a little bit darker. I want to do it, but you notice, I notice that my line here is not dark enough. You see that? It's dark in the reference in here. If I want to darken that, what can I do? Well, I could spray the whole thing, but now let me try something different. Let me use a mask. So now I'm going to use the mask. Now I don't really have a good curve that corresponds to that, do I? Not really, not a great, I'll just use the straight edge here, okay? Why? Because, well, I think I can get away with it. Right there, I'm just gonna try to bring a little more darkness in there. So I'm gonna make an oval shape. See, I'm going to oval. I see that vibration too. I'm gonna move the compressor. The compressor's causing that. See, I made a little oval shape and it kind of darkened that down, and now that's what I need to, but I see that line becomes ambiguous again right here. I'm really being precise about that. It becomes, I guess, it's too thick here. So I'm gonna see if I can kind of make that line become less apparent. There I go, lighten up a little bit like that. And I think that's pretty good. I left that kind of sloppy over there because it looks sloppy in the reference, meaning the edges are not super well defined. And so a lot of this is soft, blurry, almost like, I don't know, like ambiguous, nebulous types of things, okay? Now, one last thing before I go, the brown that's in here looks like it's about the same as it is going over the top of this little highlight. You see that? I don't have that. Well, I want it. I want to get it. I got to get it. How am I going to get it? Well, I'll just spray it on there. I'm freehand that on there. So I'm going to take my airbrush. I'm just going to go around here like this. Like that. See if I can make that happen. Now, I don't want to go too dark, but I definitely want to put something on there. It's not quite as dark as the iris is it, but it's there. Okay. Now, in doing so, you're probably going to inadvertently hit your highlight you put in there. Just come back and revisit it with the eraser and restore that to where it was. Okay. And that looks okay. Now, I'm also seeing that maybe I'm a little bit too light right in here. So I'm going to make that small move. Now, I'm not trying to go to final. I'm just trying to improve because I got a feeling that all these colors I'm using are not accurate. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean that despite my best efforts, I am not really able to make a good color judgment while I've got all this white surrounded, okay? Because the color of the right color is gonna look different here when it's surrounded by white, even if it's a perfect match to that. So because of that, I exercise extreme caution. I'm not going too far. I'm not going too far with it. I'm being conservative about how much, and I'm not trying to tweak it too much. I'm not trying to adjust the color. I'm really trying to get the value closer to the reference without overshooting it. And I feel pretty safe right now. I mean, I don't feel like I'm as dark as the reference. I mean, I get a little nervous thinking I'm too dark right here, but not only because that looks too light. Okay, that is too light, but I'll deal with that later. I'm not really too worried about that. I will put some more flesh tones in there. Everything around here is going to get darker, but because it's white right now around, it makes this look super, super dark. Okay. And the other thing you want to do before you move on is probably add a little bit of color to this side right here. So I'm going to go in and just freehand that. Let's just freehand that. Let's just kind of fill that in because that's got to be darker like that. Okay. Kind of get that eyeliner in there. I think she got a little mascara or something going on. And you notice I'm not worried about that edge being rough because the eyelashes are going to run into it and make it a little bit more rough, softer or more subtle. In other words, this area is going to blur a little bit as we get more other objects on top of it. And it's also going to be more subtle because the contrast is going to go down when we get more color. Let's make that darker. And let's see if we can, oh, that's not a very good job of that. Let's try to make that line smooth there. Now, that is important here. Okay. Notice that when I move up, my line's wobbly. I want a smooth line here. Let me tell you a trick to that. You'll get a much smoother line if you paint not vertically, but horizontally. Okay. So much more natural stroke to turn this way. Okay. I'm going to zoom in a moment. Turn it this way and paint so that you can make a horizontal stroke. So I'm rotating it upside down like that. And I want to make a stroke that's horizontal, and I'll have a much easier time of it just going like this and much smoother, as you can see, if I want to freehand something. Now, let's say that you're not comfortable with your freehand skills, and that's understandable because some of you are pretty new to the airbrush. In that case, you can take a curved shield and make that happen. Okay, just a curved shield, cover this up because what happens is it's going to fade up. In other words, this part up here is going to be soft. Okay, I'll soften it up right there. I'm freehanding it, but this part's going to be soft as it fades up. Okay, now I don't want to fade too much. I don't want to fade, but just to give you a preview, this is going to fade up. Don't render this yet, okay? But I'm just going to show you that when you put a mask on here to make this, fade it, but don't spray it. Now, I don't want a lot of overspray in here, okay? Why not? Let me explain real quick why I don't want overspray in there, because if I don't tell you now, you won't know why. I want to tell you why, all right? I want to make some lashes in here. One way to make lashes is do this. Now, when I make this lash, it's going to, let me go ahead and make a bad lash. I'll make it worse than that. Okay, that's a bad lash, all right? All right, so I'm trying to make that lash here, and you can see how well this lash corresponds to my target, right? It's just pretty awful, okay? Doesn't look anything like my lash, all right? So what can I do about that, okay? Well, I've got some options, but my best tool will be to remove the paint. I don't think covering is going to do so well. So I can remove it. Again, I've got a tool. I'll pull out the doll first to see if I can do that. And the doll is going to give me limited success, but let me just continue at it and see what's going on here with this. I'm going to try. So what I'm doing, I'm scratching away the excess paint, leaving a fine line in there in between it, hopefully. There we go. So I'm just removing the paint like that. And what I'm trying to do is just get it to become, or get it back to where it was. I'm trying to make it thinner. All right, make it thinner, thinner, thinner. Where I had a thin line the first time. So I'm going to, now here's why you don't spray this overspray, because I want to shape this into here. Look what I'm doing. As I scratch into there to reshape this lash, I'm scratching the overspray, and look at the results. I'm scratching a white line around it now. I don't want to do that. So that's the reason not to do the fades and backgrounds first. You do those last. Don't do them first. So do lines are okay, but anything that's got some fades and transitions like this, you don't want to do yet. So if I'm trying to manipulate and shape these things with a dowel or eraser or blade, when I scratched around it to change the size of it, I scratched into the background there. If the background's white, it's not a problem. But if the background's got any color in it, it becomes a problem, okay? Same with this. Now here I can go in here and maybe try to help that a little bit, but I don't know about that. I don't really think that's gonna work. But so this is not, I've been better off if I erase this part first before I start doing this. If I go and start removing this first, I'll have a better time of it than if I try to do what I just did, by erasing and reshaping things in this way. Okay, is that clear, everybody? Everybody understand that? Okay. All right. Okay, so I'll stop talking and I'll start recording, and I will let you guys take this on. Okay, I'm looking for any questions. Anybody have questions, you can write them or say them and I'll answer them. One thing that helps keeps me from making mistakes is just slowing down too, because if I slow down and think about it before I commit paint to the surface, I usually end up making fewer mistakes. I spend less time repairing things that way. And of course, it's no fun repairing. So if you want to move your painting forward, you want to just sit there and fix something. I think the analogy I had one time was it's like replacing your air conditioning unit in your house when it breaks down. You know, you spend all this money, but it's still doing the same thing, it's still cooling the house, and yet you're out of money. Okay, I see it the same way when you make a mistake, you spend all that time fixing it and you're just back to where you were or where you were supposed to be. So if you make less mistakes, you spend less time fixing it and therefore you have less frustration. And best of all, your painting advances faster. It moves forward more quickly if you slow down because you make less mistakes. So if you want to speed up, slow down. Okay, you'll spend less time making mistakes and your painting will thank you for it. All right, so I'll give you guys some time and I'll shut up for a moment here. We're live again. All right, so looking at this here, and there's some things here that are a little bit different than the other eye, not much, but a little bit different. So I'm looking, I noticed they've got some, I'm seeing more of this shadow here's more prominent. It's kind of a dark area. Here's kind of a purplish color. I'm also seeing, again, we're repeating these wrinkles in here with the dark color inside them. This is pretty much the same. So a lot of things are the same. The only differences are probably this shape right here, this kind of structure in here that we've got, okay? Now I do see the shadow in there, but I definitely do not want to put that in there yet because I need to put the lashes and the detail on first and get those adjusted the way I want them before I start putting the background in, okay? So that's the reason I don't do that yet. So while I'm at it here, let me go ahead and do a couple of things. I'm gonna go ahead and try to add this to it. Now, there's a shadow coming across now. I've got an old stencil here, but I can take a piece of paper here or anything curved in here and make that happen. So I'll try with a stencil just to kind of, since I've got it in my hand and it's there, but you can take a curved sheet of paper, just cut it, and I'm just gonna dust that on there. It's pretty sloppy, but let's check it out and see how it looks, okay? That's not a very good rendition of it, but I'm just gonna go ahead and use my tools to clean it up. So I'm just gonna work in here like that, just get in close, stay close. I don't wanna do any faders or soft edges. I just wanna know where it lives, okay, the position of it, and try to make that work. So let's make that come in here like that. Okay, freehanding it. And while I'm at freehanding it, let's just go in here and make a few light dark shapes in here too. Just kind of fill that. That's almost a solid color in there, isn't it? Let's just fill that in with solid color. It's really black, but I'm gonna go ahead and use this color. Just get in close. I'm super close. I'm like 1/8 of an inch to it. Really close. Now I got some overspray going on, which means I'm probably got some tip dry happening. Let's see if I can keep that clean. I'm just gonna put a little bit in here too, just really close. Now, let me tell you the mistake people make. The mistake people make is usually they're so far away, the overspray travels all the way down into here, okay? Don't let that happen. Oh, I'm off the screen. I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was getting so far off the screen. Let's move everything up a little more, like that, okay? There we go, okay. So people get spray in here and the overspray travels over in here and that causes a problem. You see, I've already got a little overspray, then I gotta be mindful of that because that could be a big issue later on. So what I'm doing now, I'm just gonna go in here and just come on down this, just freehanding it on there. Check it out. Now, if you're not sure where to go with it, let's say you're not sure and you don't have any lines here, pull your pencil out and say, okay, well, I got a line right here and I got another line right here, okay, and this kind of comes out like that, okay? So that kind of helps me, it might guide my freehand work. It's a lot better than working in a barren area, just depending on the clip technique, okay? So that way you have a more sure, determined path for your airbrush than if you're just spraying blindly on white. Now, I am getting a lot of overspray inside there, which I don't like, but it's probably a product. I remember I do have a bit needle, so that would be the problem too. So I'm going to get in there dark. So I'm just trying to get all my darks in there. I do see that I need to come up with that a little more. I can flip it back and forth and notice that there's a problem there. Let's see if we can fix that and move that edge up a little bit more, like that, okay? And move this down a little bit, okay, like this. Oh, I'm flooding it pretty good there. You see that flooding it? I'm running into where I'm throwing too much paint down, all right? And then let's go back and see what we can do about making some adjustments. And now, you see I've got a couple of artifacts down there, some strange things happening. I'm not really worried about that. I'm gonna leave that. See that little blob right there? That's one of those things where I used to go in and sterilize it, but I do see a highlight right here. And I need to keep that open right there. Open it up so the white is showing through there, okay? And just making sure I'm not covering up anything that's gonna be a highlight later. Now, after I've done that, I'm gonna go back in with the blade and then look at some things. I see a couple little highlights right in here like this. This is the skin showing through actually. So I'm gonna flip it back a couple times and make some skin show through right here. And I see a super hard edge right here. This is super hard down in here. So let's get in there and bring that to a corner right there like that. I'm using the blade right now, but I think the dowel might be suitable. So let me see, can I find out? I just sharpened those dowels. Let me see if I did a good job. I'm gonna try to harden that edge up a little bit. No, that is not working out. Sometimes I'll rotate the dollar to see if I can find a better cutting edge, but that's just not behaving at all. That's to my disappointment. Okay, so can't really do anything with that. I can go ahead and clean this edge up. This is a hard edge right here. I see it. It's almost geometric. Again, the dial is not great here, but it's working. The dial doesn't work. Don't try to put a whole lot of force on it because you'll end up denting the paper, even against a hard surface. So don't feel like you've got to just, bear down on it really hard. If it'll give you an edge, that's fine. I've got a kind of edge there. Let me use the blade to see if I clean it up a little better. Like that. And I'm taking the blade and move it in circles too. That's another technique. You move the blade in circles like this and try to open an area up. And it leaves some specks behind. You see those specks and things? That actually enhances it. That adds some texture to it because texture is small featured contrast. That's all it is. So we're letting that contrast work in our favor. I do see this needs to be a harder edge. So I'm gonna take the blade, try to see if I can come in there and make that edge a little bit harder, at least for that now. And I'm gonna clean it up. Now I'm gonna clean up the outside of it. It's not brown in there. It's more of a bluish color. So I'm gonna clean up, get this that brown overspray with the eraser. I know there's highlights in there, but I don't want this brown in there because I don't see brown in the white of the eye. It's more of a blue cast. So let's clean up some of that mess over there. Okay, here we go. All right, so that's looking a little better. I feel a little better about things there. Now, the other big part I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up into here. I'm going to also take care of that, those wrinkles. Remember those wrinkles we did on the other side? I want to do those on this side too. So to do that, I'm just going to slide down here a little bit and see if I can make that happen. So easily done, easily. I'm going to put my finger right here to guard that white of that eye this time. So I'll get a brown overspray on it. And I'm just going to put a little brown in there like that. Okay, you see what I did? Okay, I did miss that a little bit, but and I'm going to, right now, I'm really putting the color of the wrinkle in there. That's all I'm doing, the color of the wrinkle. I got overspray going everywhere, but notice the wrinkle gets lighter as it goes toward the front, so I'm going to let my overspray go that way too. I'm going to also put a little more darkness right here and a little bit more right here. Okay, that feels a little better to me. Okay, now I've got some overspray where it doesn't belong. I might just leave it there. Now, you could try to render these wrinkles, but like this, but that doesn't always work out because the wrinkles are not that coarse. They're actually much more precise. So I want to be precise. The most precise instrument I have in my hand is the blade. So I'm going to go ahead and flip it a couple times and try to avoid out these areas right here. I'm laying the blade way down on this side. Do not hold it like a pencil. Remember, to hold it like a pencil is death to your painting. Okay, you cannot do that. You must hold it flat where its surface is almost parallel to the paint surface. Okay, so the edge of that blade needs to be laid down parallel to the surface or close to parallel. Otherwise, your painting is going to suffer. And then so will you later when you realize that you messed up, right? So you don't want to do that. So I'm going to come in and bring it really close to that other line. And what I leave behind is a very fine line of dark behind it. I kind of cross over the edge there. There we go. So I'm suggesting this here by just getting here like this and making that happen. Okay. And then there's another one next to it. It's a little bit ambiguous in here. In other words, I can't really see them. I know there's something there, but I can't always, the lines are not always clear. There's sometimes some ambiguity or mystery about these lines that is not always clear, but they're there. There's something there. I don't want to leave it sterile. I want to put something in there. So that's what I'm doing. I'm kind of taking a guess, but they do disappear. So let's make them disappear. Here they fade out to nothing because, well, we're in a background that has nothing pretty much. All right, there's the fade out to just emptiness right there. All right, so that's looking okay. Maybe a little bit, we'll bring a little more into that. Now I need to fade, like I did before, I need to fade over it with the color. Oh, there's another thing. This is the edge here, it's very defined, okay? So I may want to go back, I do want to go back through here and kind of scratch that off to get that edge more solid, a little more solidity to it. Okay, now I've lost the boundary of it. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just make me a nice concave curve here like this. I just took the blade, I cut out a curve like this. Well, I've got one here that's convex, but I need a concave one here too, because I see the places where I need to do things like that. Okay, now I know that doesn't fit perfectly, but I can certainly help it. I can certainly get things going like this, anything like this, and just kind of getting some edge established. So I'm just going like this. Remember, I'm making an oval on top of this and overlapping the ends of it like that. Okay, and that's getting there, but it actually needs a curve. So I'm going to go ahead and get a little more curve to it. I'm going to clip off that offending area. There's a little bit of an area that's offending me here. And soften that out a little bit. Okay, so you see, now I've got that area right there that's kind of sticking out right here. I don't need it, so let's just see if we can use the dial to get it off. Okay, and I'll just set to step up and do his job finally. There's still a little bit of an artifact right there. You can see that little bit sticking out. Let's get back in here like this and kind of get rid of that. There we go. Now we got a little bit more smooth thing happening. I need to fade this out a little more. So this is faded into the background. Okay, and this is not dark enough. So that line's not dark. So here's what I'm doing to make it dark. I go back over it again like this. Okay, and take the blade and re-scratch that area. Now why I do that? Because my shadows weren't dark enough. Darker shadows. Okay, and push out a little bit more in it. And let's put the one next to it. So if you don't have enough contrast in it, the solution is to add more paint and scratch again. Right? And what I'm leaving behind is a little bit darker this time because I added more paint over it. Of course, my contrast is going up because I've now got this extra white area when I had shadow before. And some of it is tricky to fix, but I really don't think it's an issue for us. And so now I've got a little bit darker there. I'm going to go back and fade it again. I'm going to soften the edge up a little bit. Like that, kind of darken a little bit more. And that, if you're not careful, you can damage your paper. This paper is designed for the blade, but I kind of got a little rough with it there a moment ago and made a couple of little scars on it, but again, I don't think it's going to be noticeable. There we go. So I'm starting to get some color. I don't want to go too dark. I need a little more orange in there later, but I don't want to go too dark. I notice that I'm going to overlap this. It looks like it's got a little bit of a dark area in the hair going across that. I think that's a pretty good spot right now. This up in here, this is so much lighter than the other side, so I'm going to barely go over it like this. Barely dust over it because it's lighter. Compared to the other teardrop, it's nowhere near as dark. And let's see if the dial will help me on this. So I've got a super highlight right there. I don't think I can use the dial for that. Okay, not very well, but I can try. And let's see, I can clean that up a little bit. There's a strong light area that comes straight down like this. Like that, there we go, like that. Okay, so I'm going to kind of see if I can get that off. I can't get out. Once I establish the edge, I use the eraser to lighten it up a little bit. Like that. Oops, I think I made a mark. It should have been there. Okay. Yeah, I moved that edge over. So fix that, go back in there and just kind of repeat that area like that. And this, let's use the blade. I think the blade's going to be a little more precise right in that spot. Right there's what I'm trying to do. Like that. A little better. Okay, it kind of comes in. So I need to bring that edge out like that. There we go. And I need to also, I see that I got too much overspray. Let's kind of push that up into there a little bit with the eraser. So if you want something subtle, a small move, use the eraser. The eraser is going to give you a smaller move. Also, I'm going to get in there and just put a little bit more of a highlight back in here. Now, the highlight's not going to show up very much until I get more dark color in there behind it. But this is not the right color yet because it's more red. And this is a little bit too grayish color for some brown color. And I need a little more red in there. A little speck right there. And I think that should be enough for us to get going. Let's kind of clean that up a little bit in here. Okay, and I think that's okay. It's not showing very white right now. That's because, again, we don't have much contrast going on there. You may want to, there may be some things where you can work with the dial. You might say, okay, I see some noise in here. You may want to come with the dial and put some dots or something in there like this. Just kind of scuff it out a little, but I think we're in pretty good shape. There's like, I don't know what that is right there. It's probably a pencil mark that should be there. See if I can help that. There we go. Now the dial's decided to wake up and come to life. Thank goodness. Just in the nick of time. Okay, so I think that'll stop right there because I think that pretty much has it. You may want to clean up some of these areas at the bottom. You can't see that. There may be some areas at the bottom you want to deal with, like this hairs down here to make them thinner. Just take the dial, come right next to it, thin it up, make it thinner. Or the blade. Again, if the dial doesn't work, let's try spitting on it. All right, I spit on it a little bit, and it does clean up a little bit better, okay? Like that. Spit is like acid to this paint. It'll dissolve it pretty good. You might have to wait for a moment for it to take effect, but it'll get through it. I didn't do this part yet. I should probably do that. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit of a nudge right here. Now, I don't really have a curve that corresponds to that, do I? Or do I? Let's see. What about one of these? I'm trying to find something that corresponds to that right there. I don't really have much. This looks like it's in two parts, okay? So if it's in two parts, you can do it in two parts. You can just add a little bit here first. Like that, okay. And come back and maybe move it and try a little bit of a section right here. Like that, okay, make it a little more. Just have to come back and do it again. Like that. Okay, that's starting to get a little dark, so we're gotta be careful. But no, it's not quite, it's not that's too dark, it's the area next to it's not dark enough. So I get back in here and maybe hit it again right here. Okay, that's getting there. Now this other edge is pretty hard too, so you may want to get in there and kind of accent that. Let's see how that looks, okay? And if you have to do any cleanup now, I don't really think I have to clean that up too much. That looks okay. I'm worried I'm getting a little bit dark in there, you know, maybe clean that up a little bit. It's starting to get a little dark, so I'm gonna back off. So if you think you're too dark, you may wanna step back and walk away from it for a while. Okay, so any questions about what I've just done? You guys have that all in hand, right? Understood everything I said? All good? All right, glad to hear it. And if you have questions, don't be afraid to throw them up in the chat or just turn your mic on and ask me the question. I'm right here. So, or send a message in chat either way. I missed it in case I happen to. All right, so the poison is dangerous because the thing that makes it so wonderful can also be deadly, which is the sticky side. The sticky side is great because it stays when you put it there, but it's dangerous because it leaves residue sometimes, a glue residue. So because of that, you got to be careful with it. I usually try to de-tack it on my hand or my forearm or something like that. But first try to get rid of the glue, the excess glue. And then I'm gonna make a cut. Now my cut is gonna be, let me show it to you off camera here. I'm making a little cut, like, let's see which way these going. These are going probably like, trying to get the direction of these lashes here. They seem to go up, okay, like that. Okay, they're gonna go up. So we'll make them going up. Like this. So a little cut going up like that. Okay, so there it is right there. And you see what I've got, a little cut like that. And what I'm going to do, let's kind of zoom in so you can see me up close working on this. And then I'm going to show you different ways to do it. So I've got some lashes in there. You see it kind of fits the curve right there. So I don't know where that is. You should probably draw that in so I know where to position it. So let's kind of draw it in real quick, kind of sketch it in there like that. Does that work for me? Yeah, I think that'll be okay like that. All right, and then maybe do a couple more. So while we're at it, let's just kind of get these other ones in there, just so they know where they are. And they're overlapping there. Be mindful that there's a little chaos built into the lashes. They don't all go in the same direction. A lot of people overlook that. They make them all parallel. In reality, they're not parallel. They're actually a little bit of variation. It's like a group of people all heading in the same direction, but not taking exactly the same path. Okay, all right, so I'm gonna let's put one right here. I'm gonna spread, now what I do is I'm gonna spread the gap like that. See, I've got a little gap in it, okay? And that little gap enables me to create a nice lash. I can take my finger or a mask or something like that, let's just use the finger. Take my finger right there and I can just spray right on it. So I'm just gonna spray right here like that. And voila, I have a lash, okay? Easy, clean, and better than a traditional brush will do, okay? Now, obviously, you're gonna have some that have more curve in it, okay? That's obvious. So to handle those, what you do is you make a cut with more curve in it, okay? Like this. I made another cut with more curve in it. Well, I'll lay one side down, spread the love, just spread it out like that. Now, I'm taking a big risk here because I'm using this thing, but there's a danger to this. Believe me, it's very dangerous because it tends to leave residue on it, and that residue is no bueno. All right, that residue is really bad, but it does a nice job. Now, let's suppose you don't have sticky notes. Let's say you don't have any. Are you still going to be able to survive? Oh, heck yeah. Okay, because you still have options. So let me show you what those options are. A substitute. So we can take just a regular piece of paper like this, like we have in this, and we can make a cut in that too. Well, so when I make a cut in this, it'll do the same thing. Let's kind of get over to the side here and make a cut. I'll just make a little curvy cut, and let's make it right about, I don't know, maybe in here. Okay, I hate to use it in the middle of that curve, but that's all right. There's a nice cut. Now, in this case, what I can do, if I don't have any sticky note, I can actually build something like this. So I'll go in here and I'll spread the love like that. Okay, just spread it out a little bit. Kind of get it to where you want it. And that seems pretty good. I'll put a magnet to hold that. And then I'm going to put a piece of tape on the edge. Okay, so that little piece of tape right here, I don't need a big piece of tape. Let's use a tinier piece of tape. That's too massive. And so it's kind of like building a sticky note like that. There we go. Okay, so I've got that on now. As one piece, hopefully that's one piece. I can take that whole thing off. I didn't work at all because it fell apart. I need a better system here. So let's try that again. I'm going off camera and I'm going to try to put the tape on it without the camera on it. Try that. Okay, let's just try shorten right there. That'll work. Okay, so what I've done is I put the tape on there. What that does, it leaves it open, opens the gap up. Okay, so obviously this is backwards, so let's just lay it over like this, okay? And make sure the tape is on there. Sometimes I'll fold the tape over like that to really pin it down, and I kind of lock that in there now. So now when I lay that down, I can do the same thing. Let's just put one about right here. Okay, kind of a shadow there. I'm sorry for that. See if I can remedy that. Let's get that out of shadow by putting some magnet on there. Okay, And so I'm just going to spray that little piece right now, holding it down. Yeah, you don't have to flood it. It doesn't take a lot of paint to make this dark. There we go. Okay, you can see a little bit heavier there. I sprayed a little heavier, but I want them to be varied in their thickness. Okay, that's a good thing. And you can just move this over. It's a little bit harder aiming this because with the other stuff, you can lay one side down, line up, lay one side down, then lay the other side down. But this still looks pretty effective. Okay, like that. Kind of rotate it away. There you go. So I can build up the whole library of things with varying widths. Okay, I don't have to have them the same width, but I can build a whole library of images like this. Let's just kind of put one in there. And notice I'm using the same pattern, but it doesn't really look like it because I'm varying the amount of paint I put on, and I'm varying the angle of it. I'm changing. Some angles are going to be very to the left and some to the right. Let's put one right here too, and see what we get. Yeah. Okay. Let's lift that up out of there like that. Okay. And so on and so forth. I think we can use it right there actually too. It looks like that curve corresponds to that a little bit, doesn't it? So why not? Okay, why not add it? Now, probably too short on some of these. It'd probably be better if I made a longer cut so I could have some length. See, I've run out of space right there. I'll have to connect that up, which I can do. These other ones are pretty short, but again, I can get away with using the same one right in here, these short ones here, just like that. Okay, it's so easy, right? I don't know if it's going to work. I couldn't even see it here, but yeah, it worked okay. I missed it though. But again, I'm not worried about it. I missed that edge. Like I was saying, it is hard to line these up, a little bit tricky to line them up, but hey, not impossible. But I missed it that time. I'm not going to sweat that. Remember I said nobody's measuring these hairs. They're not going to notice that you were off a little bit, okay? So this gives you a chance to kind of go in. Now the ones at the bottom are a little bit different. They're a little bit thinner. You probably noticed that when you're working with them, okay? They're very thin, especially down in here. They're very, very narrow. So as a consequence of that, you want to make sure that when you make your stencil or whatever it's going to be, you want to narrow that up. So let's just go ahead and make another one. I'll make another one right here that's a little bit thinner, okay? So I'll make a longer, thinner one, and this I'm going to be smarter about it this time. Okay, so I made a long one here, and when I put the tape on there this time, I want to make it narrow. So I'm going to barely move that out. You see how skinny that is? That's super, super small. Let's just bring it back in a little bit, and let's put the tape right here. Now lift it up and bend the tape over a little bit. Let's see if I can tear that tape off without destroying everything. Oh, that's not a good job. What I'm trying to do is get that tape to not cover everything. There we go. So I've laid it on here. Let's see what the gap is. Now we're looking here. See, it's a very, very skinny thing. It's so skinny. It's about the width of actual human hair. It might be too skinny. Hey, one way to find out, right? So I'm going to lay it on here like this. Oh, I got to curve it that way. I see when I can lay it on there, and let's just kind of put it in. Let's see what happens, okay? Hey, the worst thing will happen, you're going to learn something. So I'm going to just go ahead like this and lay it in there like this. Don't go heavy. It's not necessarily go heavy. And it's there, but you know, I'm not quite right. It's so skinny I can barely see it. So what I need to do, I need to open this back up. So I'll take the tape off and kind of open it back up again a little bit. Let's get a little more width to it. Just line it this way. Widen the gap a little bit. It's tricky. This is going to require a little bit of skill, which thankfully you guys have plenty of. And let's see if I can get a better jump. Lay that in there like that. The tape is on it. Pick it up and just like fold the tape over. What I'm trying to do is get that tape folded over. So it's got tape on both sides of it, so it really locks it in there. That's kind of what I'm going for now. All right, so there I am right there. Now I can see a little bit better. That's a little bit better result. Okay, so let's go after this again. Let's try this right here. We can make that happen. All right, so going back at it again, let's spread the love out a little bit, throw it in there. Now we're getting somewhere. Okay, we're seeing that. Be careful not to go too much onto that lower lid. That's a dangerous area. The other thing you want to do about this is you want to keep it very light. Okay, you want to barely spray some. So when I lay it on here like this, try to line it up with the edge of the lid. Okay, not where it tips out, but the outer edge of the lid, and just kind of dust it very light like this. Just barely put some on it. See that? I'll move there, do a little bit over there too, and maybe a little here too. So I'm kind of distributing a few of them in here, very light. Let's see what's going on. I'm missing a few. Wow, there's a lot more. I think I'd be smarter if I came in and worked on that with what the pencil to kind of just know where they go, like very lightly with the pencil. And just throwing some in there just to make sure I'm not doing stupid stuff. Okay. Now, what happens that does become stupid stuff is when people get this into the onto the lid. Okay, you don't want to do that. And so one thing I'll do to protect myself from that is I'll often put a piece of paper or something right in here, kind of block it up, or a piece of tape, you know. And I'm just basically trying to block this from becoming a problem. I put a couple of pieces of tape on there. I don't want it to go onto this lid right there. I know I'm moving things around. Okay, and the reason I don't want that because you don't see that in the painting, or sorry, in the photographs. So by blocking this off, now I can pretty much go in here and just make lines in here with impunity without fear of shooting onto the lid, the lower lid. Because the lower lid it should have no paint on it, no lashes on it, that is. All right, so there I am with this. Here, let's see if I can make that happen. Okay, I see this. I'm going to kind of roughly go over this and see if I can find some help. Now, I'm going to stay light. Now, it does get difficult to see the paint come out. So I spray over here so I can see the paint come out, then move over to the painting. Okay, I do the same thing here. I hold it over there until I see the paint coming out, and I just barely putting some on. Okay, I'm not putting much on, just barely. Let's make some short ones. Okay, let's make one come over this way, hold it down. Very light. The lighter is the thinner one up here, okay? And these are pretty fine hairs, so I'm going to stay pretty light. I'm using the same curve here, but really, I'd be better served if I have another curve that's a different angle to it, or not different angle, but different curvature to it, because I think that would make it look more realistic. But I'm getting away pretty much with the same color curve again and again here in this case, okay? Now, if you add a Post-it note, you can do that with a Post-it note. It's a little bit easier, okay? But the problem with Post-it note is, hey, my curves are going the wrong direction. So let me see, let's try to Post-it note on this side, with curves going the other direction. Let's see what we can make of it, okay? So here's the curve, and this going another direction. We find there's a long one, right. I think I'm running out of long ones. I thought I had some long ones, maybe here, okay? So the one thing about it, when you have sticky paint, you can lay one side down like this. Okay, lay one side down and then the other side down. Spread it out just barely like that, okay? And make it happen. Now, in this case, it's probably going to be too long. I'm going to let it run long. Okay. Let's see what we have. Well, actually, it worked out. It didn't work. I'm going to try to make it long. I want to show it when you make a long one. Okay, so let's make this one longer. Okay. Spread out a little bit more. Okay, let's see if we make that one look longer. I'm trying to make a mistake so you guys can see what not to do. So that one's a long one. Okay. Ah, darn it. Wasn't longer. Okay, I must be doing something wrong here, guys. Let's see, I'm trying to make a long, let's do a long one right, maybe right here. Let's just make a super long one. I'm going to force it to go long here. Open it up a lot. That'll have to be long there. You see, it's so open. All right, so let's say I do one that's too long. Let's just put it, or you put it in the wrong place. That had to work. Okay, yeah. It's too long and it's too dark. You can see why that fit. If that's the case, you don't have to remove it necessarily, okay? What I would do is go in and reduce its presence. In other words, you can, first of all, let's shorten it a little bit. Yeah, you definitely want to shorten it up a little bit, okay? But over here, as far as that, you don't have to cut to completely remove it. What you can do is lighten it up. So I can go in there and just go over and drag that eraser over it a little bit like that and lighten it up. So it's still there and it's still part of the painting. It just doesn't look so heavy now, okay? And you don't notice it's a little bit thicker than the other ones because, well, it's light, okay? And that helps make a difference too. Now, these lashes are going to go all the way into the inside of this eye here. They're actually going to reach all the way into this part, and they're barely there. These are so light in there, they are barely there. You're not really going to see much of them. So be mindful of that. Be careful that you don't want to make them too dark. They're super light. Now, you may want to just go into the pencil and draw them in there. Sometimes I might leave the pencil. Now, I don't usually do any pencil work in it, but if the pencil work is light enough and it's easier, I'll come use that. But you know, it's got to be about as light as you go with the pencil. Right there. So the pencil might be an alternative. You could just use the pencil in there instead of the paint, but I want you to know that you can use the paint too. Okay, the paint is certainly on there. The pencil, I don't know how it'll hold up or how it'll look in the long term with this pencil. But you can see with the pencil work, it actually kind of gives you that subtle. You do need to come in here and add a few lines and dots on the perimeter. Let me address that, because if you look at the base of this, there's these black dots where the roots are. Okay, the roots of the what? The roots of the hair. Okay, each hair has its root on it. So I want to put that on there. So let's see if I'm on screen here. Let's come up a little bit. All right, and make sure I'm in focus there. All right. Okay, let me lock that focus. Okay, and so there's dots, little dots. If you look close to these little dots, so I'm going to get in there and try to make some little dots. Now, for those, when we talk about beginning classes, tip dry, tip dry, tip dry, we talk about making dots, like these are the dot exercise. Oh, that's so boring. But you need that. You need to learn to make dots, because if you don't know how to make the dots, you're going to end up having trouble when it comes time to make them. So I'm just going to add some little dots along in here, little tiny dots, little specks. It's almost like little bits of noise in here. Okay, and these little specks represent the root of the lashes. Okay, they're kind of a line of them in here in some places. Yeah, okay, and I'm kind of letting them splatter and splatter a little bit, okay, because I want it to be grungy, a little bit noisy, okay. I don't want to be so dark, but I think I can get away with some darkness here. So anywhere I see a dot, and they're pretty small, they're really tiny dots. Every time I see it on the reference, I'll put there. You see that splatter right there? That ended up going that way, and that looked like a little hair. So it actually helped me. Like that didn't help me. That was pretty shitty. Pardon my French. Pretty cockeyed, I mean. All right. So that was a bad move. So I'm gonna go ahead and kind of make some dots here. So I'm just making noise here. Now it's tempting to colorize this. Don't colorize this yet. Don't shade it yet. And the reason people do that is because they try to paint. They tend to paint the things they see that are most obvious first. Big shadows, things like that. But really what you want to do is you're going to paint the texture first, okay? And after you lay this in here, it's time to go and refine it. Okay, let's refine a few things. Like that black spot's a little too black. Let's smudge it a little bit. Maybe that's a little bit too big, too dark. Let's kind of adjust that. I might, go in and make some highlights or kind of just massage it a little bit. Maybe get rid of a couple of them. You don't like them, get rid of them. Maybe there's a highlight in there or something like that. But anyway, you go in and tweak a little. There's a hair that goes invades and that shouldn't be there. So now I'm just kind of making, see, I've got some noise in this now. In this case, this is where you come with the stencil and work that. Let me show you what I would do if I was going to use a stencil for that. I have some stencils that are grunge stencils that are designed for just this purpose, okay? And the purpose of them is to go in and make these little dots. So what you do is you lay your mask over this right here, lay your grunge stencil over that, and spray right along the edge there to make all these little dots, okay? And that's like in seconds it happens versus what a minute or two versus this. So there's dot stencils, grunge stencils, things like that. You just cover up the part you don't want to affect and spray right on. Okay, I'm not going to do that here because obviously I'm not going to use that. I don't have one in my hand. The other thing I want to do is I need to connect the dots. In other words, I need to kind of have some continuation between these lines here in the background. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of fill in some of these lines like this. Maybe I'm seeing more than I have here, like that maybe. And I see some lines come through here like this. So I'm kind of having some lines across the boundary here on that lash. I'm just freehanding those. Okay, I can freehand those right now. And so it's looking pretty good. I see a bigger dominant lash right there. I'd like to have that big dominant lash right here. You see that one? Do I have one in this that can do that? No, maybe. I think that's not quite got enough curve in it. But maybe I'll just use it anyway. So let's go ahead and put that in there, and let's check it. See if it's in the right place. That should be okay. Give it some width. I'm using this because I'm too lazy to go find the other stencil. Cover this up because I definitely don't want any overspray into my lid there. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now I'm just going to, it's a dominant color. I'm not going to go real black with it, but it's there. So let's just go ahead and make it like that. And you see I was pretty light. I only sprayed about 50% coverage on that. I didn't go 100%. Even with 50% coverage, look how dark it is. Okay, it's pretty dark with 50% coverage. So you don't want to go too crazy with the coverage. You don't need a lot, not a lot at all. I'm going to go ahead and there's another one here that needs to go darker. I just saw it. There it is right here. This one here needs to go heavier. So I'm just going to see if I can give a little more weight to it. And again, I'm going to spray super light in here, just super light. Like that's how light I'm spraying. Just go in there like that. Stop. I didn't. I can still put just white or light through that because I didn't spray much. But you'll be surprised how dark that looks when you pull it off. Obviously, there's a big miss right here because I missed and invaded right into this spot. Well, let's take the dowel, go back in here, and kind of refine it a little bit and kind of get rid of that. So I got that boundary. I definitely don't want to cross that boundary there. And so that's how you do lashes. And I don't see much lashes, any lashes up in here. So I'm not going to worry about that. The other side is going to get some lashes for sure. But so we'll do I'm not going to do the other side now because I'm going to let you guys do it. But that's pretty much how you do the lashes. So our assignment tonight is to get all the lashes in there. Now, having said that, what's going to happen? I'm not going to warn you about what's going to happen so you don't do it. You don't be the one that does it. All right. I had a question. Let me answer this question. The recording, the template with those circles, the positive and negative, those came from my studio, the Blair School of Art. We have a whole line of studios there, positive and negative. This is about 20-year-old stencil or 20-year-old design that I licensed from Europe, from a Spanish company in Europe. But they're positive and negative, the same size, and we sell them. They're not expensive at all at Blair, the School of Realism, .com. And after the class, you may discover some stencils that you like and want to order them and let me know. And we give a discount to the former students. So if you have some, just get us a list and I'll have Samantha write up something and she can get you a better price than what you see online. Okay. All right. So let me talk about the thing I was getting ready to say. the problem that everybody does, not, I'm gonna say, it happens in every class. So who of you is going to be the person that does that? Make up your mind right now that you're not going to be the example, okay? Because if you be conscious of it, what they do, everybody, well, not every class, there's one or maybe even two people that make their lashes too dark. I'm only spraying 50% coverage here, 50%. I am not spraying heavy, guys. So there's tempting to spray black because in your mind you think, oh, that's black mascara. Yes, it is very dark mascara, but because it looks darker than it is because of the contrast, because there's so much contrast around it. Once you put 50% on, it looks black. You see these that we did, they look pretty dark. Okay, they look black, especially this last one did. But you saw that I was only spraying about 50% coverage on there. So aim light. It's better that they're too light than too dark. Also, secondly, do not allow them to be uniform darkness. Some of them make them barely there. Some of them you like ghosted in. Okay, that's why you want them to look like these pencil marks up here. Some of them so light and they look like pencil marks. Now, if you're not really comfortable, you're having trouble controlling your airbrush, try watering your paint down. Run your airbrush out of paint, out of color, then put some water in it and spray in dirty water. And that way you kind of limit how dark it can. Now you got to be careful there because it's easy to flood it. So I've pretty much just dust it. You don't want to spray until you see it change because by then you've added too much paint. You want to spray until you hear a little paint come out or spray to the side of it on the mask so you're sure that paint is flowing, and then kind of move over to the gap in the mask to help that happen, make that happen. Now, you know, the other way to make these is the way I told you, is to go in and use is to spray an area. I'll go ahead and do it. I need to do that again because I probably didn't do it well. I'll just do it on one of these lashes, okay? Is to go and spray an area with dark color and then manipulate. It's kind of like I did this one up here, okay? So that's another way is to go, you know, like that. You can also do this. Let's try it like this. You can also take a piece of paper, a curved piece of paper like this, okay, and go in there and spray one side of it. Let's just spray one side like that, okay, and then go in with the dowel and clean up the other side. Okay, that way you got a smoother curve to start with at least, and just kind of clean it. Now the only thing about this, it doesn't give you a super clean finish. Okay, it kind of leaves a little bit of debris behind, but that's not always a bad thing. But you know, you do have to contend with that. If you're having trouble with it, you may want to go in and get the blade and see what the blade can do. You know, get in there and just kind of carve off this side. So you see what I'm doing? I'm making it really skinny. Now I can make it super skinny, right? Like that. And now I didn't put much paint on here. It still looks pretty dark, doesn't it? So I'm just scratching. I'm trying to break it up so it's just barely there. Why? Because it's barely in the reference photo. And it's still too dark. Let's just make it thinner. See, I'm trying to make it thinner. Oops, I got rid of it. But I think I'll be okay because it falls in the shadow. So that's kind of the idea. It's going to look a little more grungy. It's not quite as smooth as the other one, but it's pretty quick and you can be more accurate. Now, this is too long. I'm going to try to erase the top of it, not completely off, but I'm trying to lighten the top of it. And when you lighten the top, that also gives you the illusion of a taper. Even though it's not really tapering up there, it kind of gives the illusion. Let's clean that up a little bit too. It's kind of messy up in there. Okay. I'm seeing it looks on the camera, it looks still pretty strange. Let's see if I can help that. Let's get it back up to lightness. Okay. So I have some grunge in here off to the side, some residue, but I'm not worried because see that shadow's going to go behind most of it anyway. So that's why you don't see me going and clean up these little marks and things like that. Okay. So now you got a couple of options, 3 options actually. You can spray the whole thing and scratch all the way around and spray half of it and spray around it, or you can split the paper and spray around it, or you can freehand it. Freehand I would not recommend at this point because they're so small, but those are options for you. The main thing also is to avoid having dark tips, okay? The tips need to be gone. So if you got a tip, like a dark spotted specked tip, it's better if that was even painted to erase that off. So they don't end in a dot. They should taper off or fade out to nothing. Okay, that was a lot of talking. All right. So I think this will be we'll stop soon. I'll go ahead and get ready to upload this to the online. Oops, sorry, I hit the camera and I always pull the plug out when I do that. Let me get it back to where it was, back to video. All right, there we go. You guys have any questions about what I've done here so far? Have I been so eloquent and clear that you guys don't have any questions? Is that what's happening? All right, no questions this evening? No concerns, no gaps in the knowledge? I mean, I really just want to get the eyes done tonight. If you can get the eyes done where you've got the lashes in there and the structure in there, then I think we've had a pretty good lick for the first day. Okay, and I know we're spending a lot of time, but we'll speed up as we move on to some other, I would say not important areas, but less important areas.
I have one quick question because I freestyle a lot. Do you suggest if you have the experience and if you are confident enough to freestyle the eyelashes, to do that, or
Yes,
you don't suggest
if
that?
you're capable, if you're able to make a line that small, then yes. I mean, I can go ahead and try one now and see how I do with it. I mean, I'm not, let me try one and see. I'll let you guys see me fail. Okay, I'm not afraid of that.
Yeah, I was just curious because I want to do it the right way, but
Yeah, well, I don't want to stifle anybody who wants to try it freehand. You can try it freehand, but let me do a freehand. Well, let me just see what I can do a freehand. So I'm going to try a freehand, that one. That was pretty dominant. Let's look at it right here. It's pretty solid. It's pretty big. So the big ones definitely you could freehand. But let me see if my airbrush is capable of it. Now for this, what I want to do is I want to prepare my airbrush for it. And to do that, I want to ensure that I have no issues with any kind of tip dry or anything like that. So I'll take the Q-tip or the cotton ball, and I will hit it with some Windex. There it is. And I will go to the front of my airbrush and I will twirl it. Again, hollow Q-tips are way better. Right now, this is not a hollow one, but hollow Q-tips are way better because you can actually stick it down the center of it. Here, I kind of have to go off to the side. And I'm just cleaning, scrubbing that airbrush out, trying to make it optimal, okay? So let's just, airbrush seems to be working okay. And so I'm gonna go in there, let me get my glasses on so I can see. And I will attempt to make this line in here freehand. So I'm gonna get really close to it like that. Let's just get in there and get it flowing and move in there like that. And you can see it's not super good. It's not super, it's kind of spitting a little bit, but it's not giving me a great amount of, there's some flooding right there, but let's get back to it. See, so it might be airbrush problems. If you can get your airbrush to work better than mine, that'd be good. But you can see it's not quite a beautiful line, but if you can do it, I would go for it. A little better, but not optimal. I mean, there's probably, my airbrush not working optimally, but I think, I found there's a limit to what the airbrush can do as far as fineness, fine lines. And you may want to see my brush is not working well. I'm just getting double line out here. But the good news is if you do that and you're not happy with it, bam, you've got the dial. You can go and say, oh, I don't like that line, or I splattered there. Yeah, no problem. And you can go in here and kind of clean it up like this, maybe taper it off a little bit. That's really important. And then maybe try to get in there and clean up here like this, and just trying to thin it up and make it. I don't have a problem with those. Those look okay. But just massage it a little bit and get it tweaked to where you want it. Okay. Again, there's debris and stuff in there. I can leave it in there because that's all going to get addressed by some darker things. But I'm not quite lined up there either, am I? You see, I'm not quite lined up. But yes, to answer your question, you could go and you want to freehand some stuff in there and not use any kind of tool. You are more than welcome to try that. Although I don't have the best of luck keeping that super clean highlight. Now I can get away with it. Maybe that was doable, but I don't think an airbrush is going to do so well in there. You have to, airbrush had to be running really, really well to get some of these little fine lines in here. But I'm not saying it's impossible. At some point, my airbrush has done well, and I've been able to make lines like that. But that's in a rare moment when it's run, everything's perfect. The world is aligned, the planets are aligned, everything's good, and your stars are on your side. That's a possibility too. So yeah, you try it. The worst thing that happens, you figure out, hey, it doesn't work. You can wipe it off, erase it, and then go back to another technique, Larry. That's what I would do. But do try, because I'm curious to see. I'm sure if you've got some skills, you've got a lot of freehand skills, you could probably make a better line than I made here. Okay. All right. So anybody have any other questions before we adjourn for the evening? Okay. Some days we're going to go later. Okay. I'm pretty sure you're going to want to go later, but so maybe prepare for that. But otherwise, I'm going to upload this. You'll have a chance to review it tonight. It'll be a private channel. Oh, reminds me. It'll be on YouTube. So the YouTube or private channel, you need to have a Google account. Okay, so I would recommend just use your own email, and if you don't have a Google account, just sign up for a Google account. That'll give you access to the videos a little more. It's more easy to get to them, and once it's uploaded, you'll receive a notice that says, "Hey, you've been invited to this private." It'll be a private page or a private video on YouTube. Okay, all right, you guys all right for the evening? Okay, Anakin, get some sleep. I know it's late there, and hey, it's really great to see everybody today. Sorry you guys can't be here in person, but hey, maybe someday, Greg, maybe we'll see you again someday too, in person. In the meantime, I will talk to you guys tomorrow. I'm going to try to use the same account or same Zoom account tomorrow morning. If you can't get on tomorrow, I will send you a new link. Okay, so if you can't get on, say around 9 o'clock, you still nothing happening, I'll try to get you a new link in there. Okay, but we'll get it working one way or the other, so don't worry about it. Okay, guys. So good to see you guys in the evening. I will see you tomorrow. I'm gonna go ahead and sign off. And so I can't upload the recording until I sign off. So I need to sign off in order to get the recording lined up to you guys. Okay, so I will see you tomorrow morning.
Thanks, Drew.
9 o'clock. Okay, take care, everybody. All right. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I know.
All right, bye-bye.